Houston, our instruments are showing that we have a incoming message from deep space. Repeat, Houston, we have an incoming message from deep space. Houston, we will begin playing message now. Houston, we're going to try and translate that up here. Hold for translation. Translation complete. We'll begin playing message now.
Hey, it's me, Melissa.
What do you do when the aliens invade? Take a shot of MK Ultra and watch Melissa Jade. Put on your tinfoil hat and tune right in. We got that crime spree, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, a complex Mandela effects, unidentified objects, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Aliens is on the sun or in Area 51. Time travels, unravels, haunted castles, cops are baffled, potential experimental thoughts that make you transcendental. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa. Crime sprees, flat earth theories, government conspiracies, complex Mandela effects, unidentified objects, a mind expanding, fake moon landing, what it all bends understanding. It's me, Melissa. It's me, Melissa.
Hello, everybody. Hi, my Shabane.
Hey, MJ. Hey, everyone.
How's everyone doing? Thanks, Debbie, for becoming a member, and thank you so much, Plainer Lover, for 25 months. That is awesome. And then hold on, OCD Shaggy for 15 months. Yo, what's up, people? It's been a while. How are you, OCD? Hi, Lee the Bee, poor Linda, Amy, MK, Harlot, Natasha, Steph, Bogart, Justiana, Neat Noodle, Sunday Doodles, Amy, Julie A, Ashley, Kitty Cat Princess, Chief, Lisa, Tommy, It's Just Jeannie, Sarah Bellum, Kate the Great, Tommy. Hello, I hope everybody's having a wonderful Sunday night. Yes, Deets, I sure can. Hi, Viking lover. It's lovely seeing everybody. I am so beyond excited to do this live. Hi, Chloe Jade. We are going to be doing a Delphi discussion. Like this trial, it's been so different to follow. We are relying on both mainstream media and a couple of independent sources to really be there, be our eyes and ears, be able to relay to us what's been going on, which has been posing as very difficult because everybody can interpret things differently. And so I feel like I know I've been playing catch up at nighttime. I've been just like trying to listen and read up on things, but it's going to be really interesting to go through and hear how everyone's interpreted the evidence or lack thereof as it's being relayed to us through other parties. Hi, Deets.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for
I'm so
coming.
excited for this. I couldn't get the other link to work. I could never get it to work through Messenger for some reason.
Messenger.
Yeah.
I've been getting updates from Nancy. I knew Nancy Grace popped in there at least one of the days. I explained this last night. I grew up on Nancy Grace like as a wee little child who didn't know anything about true crime. And I liked Nancy because it's who I grew up watching. But now that I'm an adult and I'm like, oh my God, she's horrible as far as how she handles things and what she does. But I'll always have that little bit of love for her only because I grew up watching her, if that makes sense.
I agree. I kind of feel like Nancy, like you know what you're gonna get with her. And so this is horrible, but it's more entertainment than facts, right?
It is.
And so it's kind of like watching Judge Judy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of always look at her that way.
Yeah. But okay. So our most important part of the live stream, we have our missing child for tonight's live stream. This is Hayden Cranford. He has been missing since October 28th, 2024, so only a couple of weeks, out of New Orleans, Louisiana. He is 15 years old. It says Hayden was last seen on October 28th. He may still be in the local area, or he may travel to Denham Springs, Louisiana. Hayden has a tattoo on his right calf. So if you or anyone you know has information on Hayden's whereabouts, please contact the New Orleans Police Department at 1-504-821-2222. Again, that's Hayden. Okay. So I just want to start with, before we even get into a discussion, I just want to pull the chat because I'm curious where you guys are right now before we even discuss, because I want to hear your guys' genuine thoughts, without our thoughts mixed into it. So put a 1 in the chat, and I hate doing this. Put a 1 in the chat if you believe the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that I didn't even say it yet for kids and chickles. Put a 1 in the chat if you think the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Richard Allen is guilty of these crimes. Put a 2 in the chat if you do not think the state has met their burden of proof and you wouldn't be able to convict him if you were a juror. And I have to say, I don't know if you ladies agree, I would hate to be a juror on this trial because there's a lot on the line, and I can't imagine being this torn in the middle the way that I feel I am, yet have the burden of justice for these girls and their families in that courtroom. I couldn't imagine. So we have a lot of things.
So glad I'm not on this jury.
Yeah, I think they did the right thing by pulling in the jurors from Allen County.
Sequestering them as well. I think that was a smart move.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yes.
you're right. Taking them from Allen County, which is, a much bigger city, because I think it would have been, I don't know, I think it would have been rough if they would have taken them from right there.
Yeah, for sure.
There is
And
not
that's
one single one in this chat. Wow.
Oh, seriously?
There's not
I
one.
thought
no.
there'd be at least one. Everywhere I go, there's some opposition.
There was just a couple of 3s right at the end for not sure, but you guys have to realize not sure means not guilty. The state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So if you're saying 3, that means you have reasonable doubt.
Can I ask your chat a question?
Please do.
Can you put a 4 in the chat if you think he is factually innocent? I'm curious how many think not just not guilty because they didn't meet their burden, but factually innocent. I'm curious as to what your chat thinks.
You want to explain in case someone may not understand what that may mean?
He didn't do it. He's not the right guy. They've got the wrong guy. There's no facts pointing to him that were presented, and nothing that they laid out for you, leads to Richard Allen actually being the person who perpetrated these crimes.
I'm not at that point personally. I am still open to Richard being guilty, but I think there were so many mess ups. They dropped the ball massively, and there's one that's standing so far out my head, and I know we're gonna get to it. But even if I think there are no winners in this situation. There's gonna be no winners because we're either dealing with an innocent man who, even if he gets off, his life is ruined, right? Like he said, it doesn't matter at this point. Or we're dealing with potentially a guilty man who could get let go. But think of it in regards to the girls' justice and in regards to these families. They went 5 years with nothing, and then now we're at trial, and the weight that trial, the stress, I can't imagine what going through this trial is doing to their families. And to get to this point and know that, one, oh my God, they does not seem like they met their burden. Okay. What if what if he's not the right guy? Is he gonna get found not guilty? Are we gonna come back and try someone out? Like, what do you do if he gets not guilty? What's gonna happen to
I
the
don't
families?
I think that's probably like Shay was saying earlier. I think that's where people are struggling because a lot of people confuse that they think if you convict Richard Allen, then that is somehow justice for the girls. But if he's not the guy, that's not justice for them.
No.
But I get what she's saying because if he's found not guilty, I'm actually kind of leaning towards it being a hung jury myself. But
Me
if
too.
he gets
Same.
found not guilty, then I don't think they're going to investigate further, unfortunately. I
What do you
think they'll
think,
just
Shay?
stand on like, oh, well, we got him, but the jury did the wrong thing.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. I don't see, and they made it very freaking clear they're not going in any other direction. They've made that very clear. But I'm thinking hung jury also. What do you think, Shay? Where are you at right now?
Um, yeah, I think at first I was like going into it like not guilty, but as time is kind of taken, I'm more on hung jury.
Hmm.
But my belief is he's factually innocent. Um, yes, and I think opinionated asked, does Brad look like BG? There's some similarities. I just saw a comparison on Twitter, and it's quite interesting.
Oh,
I
You
like
want
seeing the
to
comparisons.
you want to explain who Brad is for anyone who may not be fully caught up?
Uh, so okay. Brad Weber, in the map at the bottom right, the Webers, that is where his family's home and farm, or I guess farm, but family home is, and that's where he apparently went after he got off work at the Subaru dealership. But his story changed from what he reported to ISP than to the FBI. So it seemed like his times changed. He said he went straight home. And then when I think the timeline started developing more and becoming available to the public, from what I could understand, was the FBI interviewed him and he said he was servicing his ATMs. He had been out of town the weekend before or that weekend, so he just got back Sunday, so he would need to. That was like a side job he had where he would go in and refill the ATMs at like local bars and things like that. So that definitely, it would make it to be where he wouldn't be at that house. So he was contacted back in August of 2024 stating that I guess they needed to speak with him, and we can get more into that, but it's what puts this whole white van and only the killer would know, which in my opinion is complete BS because everybody has
hmm.
heard about a van early on in this case, but it's just speculation.
Yeah.
Um, okay.
But you run with how you want to do it. I'm here.
No, I just want a discussion. Like, it's impossible to relay everything that's happened. I'm not doing a day-to-day trial recap. And so I just kind of wanted to discuss now that closing arguments have been made.
Mhm.
Do you want to start out by walking through the state's timeline, what the state is
Sure.
alleging happened? So what we learned
Welcome,
throughout the
Lisa.
trial,
Sorry.
sorry, interrupt me whenever you need to do that. Um, what we learned throughout the trial was the state alleges that the girls are out on the bridge. Now, there's things that are hard facts, and I would say that the only hard facts are the video, pictures, and that cell phone data. And the hard fact is that they were on the bridge. Um, I don't know when they got on the bridge, but around, let's just say around the 2 o'clock hour. But they take a video and some pictures on the bridge. And there's a video, which I don't know that it was necessarily recorded the way that they saw it
They,
in trial,
they
No.
they were
but the
dropped off
down
at 1:38 and they
138,
had
yes.
the first Snapchat timestamp was 2:07 on
Okay,
the
thank you.
bridge.
I'm just going off the top of my head here. I just know that the down the hill happened at 2:12.
Yes.
So they caught an audio of somebody saying to the girls down the hill at 2:12. So that is basically like the start of their timeline. Then at 2:32, correct me if I'm wrong, Shay, the phone stops moving. So they believe that's when the girls were murdered.
That's when they were kidnapped. Yeah. Yep. And then they basically, the way that it was put was that their timeline was that because Richard Allen in one of the interviews stated like between like 1:30 to 3:30 he was there. They're
Mhm.
saying that if he left at 3:30 that these murders would have been completed and everything done within 1 hour. That is
Right.
how it was very first presented in the case. And then you'll hear from the defense, but basically, just a strong point the defense pointed out is you will notice during the trial, the state is going to have to shift their timeline according to
A
the
lot.
evidence that we bring to
Mhm.
you.
Because then, so if you have those two hard times that they present, the 212 and the 232, sometime in there, this van, which I guess Richard didn't call it a white van, but we know it to be a white van, but this van scared Richard Allen from doing what he was going to do and then caused him to usher the girls over up the embankment of the creek and then, do what he did allegedly in that spot there. And that's what they're claiming happened. Then they book in their witnesses with this woman who claims to have seen a muddy, bloody guy
Mhm.
walking down the street. I don't have that time frame off the top of my head. It's like three something, three like 48 or something. But if
Mhm.
you listen to her testimony, she said multiple times, like her first several interviews, she just said he was muddy, 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 muddy. And it wasn't until like her third deposition where she brings in the word bloody. So that's where they're kind of picking up. That is basically their timeline of what happened. And Richard Allen, they fill in the blanks with all this other stuff along the way. But those three times are what is pivotal to the state's case.
Right. And so basically, right here it says on the first day of trial, McLeland told the jury that this case was about three things: bridge guy, a bullet, and the brutal murder of two girls.
Mhm.
Did he ever make a connection between these things and Richard Allen? I don't, and this, this is this person's, I don't think he did. It says, but we'll get into that. And so really in trial, and welcome, Smiley. Thank you for becoming a member. The only thing, essentially, yes, because I saw someone ask, was Richard even there? Yes, Richard was there at the time of the crimes, along
He
with
admits
many
to it.
other people, and he self-admitted to it. It was because of years down the line, it was this woman who started volunteering and working, essentially found this tip. And when she was reading the tip, it reminded her of this interview with a guy, which it was logged as Richard Allen. What was the last name?
White
Whiteman, which was
something?
the street that he lived
Yeah,
on, but I actually disagree. I don't think that he was there at the time.
I don't
I
either.
think he gave a span of time 5 years later of when he could have been there. I mean, that's just my opinion on it.
Well, this is how, yeah, I see what you're saying, but this is how they made the jump. Oh,
Mhm.
I'm remembering now this person. I'm going through tips. I see this person's tip. I went back. I saw someone who was there on the day of the crimes, and it was filed away, but his name was filed wrong. But at the top of it, it was cleared. So Richard Allen had come forward. I think it was the next day, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
and said, "Hey, yep, I was on the bridge that day. I was looking at fish, da, 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 da." And so it was only years later that then they looked back into this guy and interviewed him again. And that's when the whole process started. And we went over that the last Delphi Live we did. We kind of went over the interviews and where things were at on that day of
Mhm.
trial.
I-
Um, the only thing aside from him being there that connects Richard Allen to the crime, and you could argue with me if you feel differently, but is this unspent bullet, which that could be argued that it even links Allen because
Right.
things were handled so poorly, and this is literally the only, like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the only thing they are going off of to connect Richard. Put
To
aside the
the scene.
confessions because that's a different argument.
To the scene, That's the only
to the scene.
connection they have. In my opinion, it's complete junk based on what the state what the state's witness testified to. And I don't want to have to keep repeating ourselves, because we have to remember though that everything that we're saying, like, oh, the state witness testified to this or the defense witness testified to that, we're hearing it second and third hand. So that's frustrating for us, but that's kind of all we have to go on, right? So it's it's very frustrating when it comes to the lack of transparency in this trial by her shutting everything down the way she has. But according to what we know from the state's witness, I do think that it was junk science. It wasn't an actual comparison. She didn't get the markings on the bullet until she fired the bullet. And that is like comparing apples to oranges and not apples to apples.
And I'm not too educated on ballistics, but I saw how big of a deal people were making who are far more educated regarding this was not a spent bullet. It was not fired from
No,
the
it was
gun.
cycled.
Right. So it makes a very big difference in identifying where did this originate, what weapon did it originate from. So, yes. Here's and this is going to be, in my opinion, the most damning, because I want to focus on, all right, what throughout trial is leading, because I feel like correct me if I'm wrong, like every person I've spoken to isn't 100% in one way or the other. So I like that, because it's like, all right, what part of trial really is leaning you towards, oof, yeah, I can't seem to get over that. That makes me lean towards more of guilt. And what parts of the trial are you like, no, like that doesn't make sense. I'm leaning more towards innocent. I think there's a good chance Richard can be bridge guy and he may not be the murderer necessarily. Do you guys believe Richard is bridge guy?
No.
You don't? Neither does Shay
No.
was arguing with me that
No.
anyone could be wearing those outfits. He
Well, it's
admitted
not
to
even
wearing
just
that
about
outfit.
the outfits. It's so I did hear another creator. I won't mention their name for you, but like I did hear another creator. It's one I like, but they said that nobody else was on the bridge. He was the only one on the bridge.
Yes.
Well, that's a
Yes.
bold-faced lie. There was upwards of 20 people on that bridge that day within like what, a 4-hour span. Shay, there were so many people. One of the state's
Hmm.
eyewitnesses says they drove by 3 times and didn't stop because of how many people were there. There were lots of people on this bridge, men and women alike, of different, you know, ages and genders. So there was a lot of people on this bridge that day. But if you go off of the state's own eyewitness description of what bridge guy looks like, none of
Hmm.
those match Richard Allen.
And
They're
I
all
actually,
tall. They all make him a tall man. And what's the one fact we know about Richard Allen? He's 5'4". He's like
Yeah.
barely taller than me.
5'5" on a good day. Yeah.
I
Okay.
personally think one of the things that's interesting about this is like I look at it from the aspect of like this is a public park and place and trails. Like to think that like anybody could just be out there walking their dog, enjoying the day, and you're like, yeah, I was there. And you really had
Mhm.
nothing to do with this, and you just happened to be there. Like, God, that would suck. But I agree with Deez. There was a lot of people out there. It's well known. I thought it was interesting that the state only called the witnesses that contributed to the PCA and
Mhm.
to their, I'm going to call them their quote unquote sketches of
Yes.
because I know that's going to be a highly debated thing. There's always that saying that you never ask somebody or, a lawyer never ask a witness something that they don't already know the answer to. And it's the state's burden of proof, and none of them asked if they
If they
identified Bridge
saw that
Guy.
man in the room. Yeah, none of
Yeah.
them said like, is the guy that you saw on the bridge that day here in this room? None of them asked that.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I don't remember where I heard that, but I've heard that. I might have heard it from one of you girls before. There was never, even though they had the state had numerous witnesses called to the stand that were there that day, and these witnesses were asked to describe Bridge Guy. Absolutely zero of them were asked, is that man you saw that day that you're describing in this courtroom? And everybody knows, even though it's cliche from the movies, but it does happen. We've seen it many
It
times.
has an impact to
Letitia
be
Stout,
able, yeah.
right? We see every single witness. Can you point that Lestinky out in this room right there sitting in the, and they ask you to describe the clothes, even in basic mundane criminal trials that you could watch on YouTube. It's a very standard thing that they ask, because they want you to identify this is indeed that person. Not one witness was asked, is that person that you describe in the courtroom today? Not one were asked to point out Richard Allen.
And
Yeah.
I'll take it a step farther. I don't believe Richard Allen is Bridge Guy, and the state did not prove to me that Bridge Guy committed the murders.
They didn't.
Well, I want to add like one more thing on the witnesses, and then I want to point out something else on I felt like was an investigation fail, because I truly believe there was this investigation was just botched from the beginning. But so the state's witnesses, like I said, those were like all the people that were in the PCA. But when the defense brings up their witnesses, those are a lot of other people that were on the trail during that time. And I'm like, why didn't you bring them up? Even people that lived in that area. I just kind of found it interesting. Some of the people that they heavily weighed on, like they kept trying to say that Richard Allen said he saw 3 girls, but he was mistaken. It was 4 girls, and it was Rayleigh and her little sister and friend. And but that's not true. There was a group of 3 girls that were there. I think that they have tried to force stuff to fit what they need to make him Bridge Guy. But ultimately, one of the biggest things I thought was a fail was like they spent over $4 million on this investigation and trial, this case in general, and they weren't willing to spend $10,000 to get an estimate for the height of who Bridge Guy, how tall Bridge Guy could be, because Richard Allen's so short. Why would you not do something that could give you, even if it's
Even an
skewed by a
inch.
couple
Yeah.
inch? Yeah. Like that's just one thing I've never understood. Like these little bitty things that could help you get more concrete descriptions and answers.
Well,
And
that kind of comes across to people that they were afraid of what that evidence would present to them. That then it would then point out that Richard was not the guy. So they were too scared to go down those avenues, maybe?
oh
Well,
yeah.
and it sure as hell seems like they are specifically leaving out what could potentially be exonerating evidence according to their timeline. And I'm sorry to jump around here, but I cannot get it out of my head since I spoke to Shay about it yesterday. So the last Delphi live that we did, I don't remember what specific trial day it was, but already we were talking about how the activity of Libby's phone,
It's okay.
and the fact that there was a good period of time, I think it was around after 5 p.m. on the 13th, and that's the day that they went missing and or murdered. It was about after 5 p.m. to 4 something a.m. on the 14th that the phone was inactive, right? We discussed that on the last live, and what would make this phone go inactive, right? Because the phone was recovered under Abby's body. And so it shouldn't have moved. You have to remember that the state's case was this all happened within an hour. Well, we talked about how there is a missing photo, how there was a photo taken via Snapchat, the infamous photo, yet it is not anywhere within that device. And I love that the jurors get to ask questions. I think that should be allowed in every trial, but at least with us, it gives us an idea of where their head's at. And one of the jurors even asked, well, is it possible that the Snapchat was logged into on another person's device at that time? Yes, absolutely. Of course, that makes sense. Well, since that last live, we not only now have all of those questions regarding Libby's phone, but now we have the bombshell, in my opinion, that at, what time was it? I'll have to pull it up. But there was headphones or some
Auxiliary
device
cord.
plugs in to the auxiliary of her phone.
Basically from 5 to 10 p.m. Like that's not the exact timestamps, but basically 5 to 10 p.m.
Oh
there
my
was, and it did say in the C paragraph headphones, but like Shay said, think of your old iPhones. It's that little aux cord down there at the
The
bottom.
auxiliary cord back before we had the universal charger and microphone
Mm-hmm.
port on newer Apple phones, you had that typical auxiliary cord. So tell me how, after the murders, according to the state's timeline, this phone goes inactive and they can't determine if it went on airplane mode. They know it didn't power down, but they don't know if it went on airplane mode, if there was something blocking, why it wasn't pinging, why it wasn't no longer in service. It didn't have network because the phone should have been stationary, according to the state's timeline.
Are we doing theories and conspiracies tonight or just talking facts?
No, everything.
Okay,
I
so
just want a discussion.
I just wanted to verify. So I have a thought on this.
Okay, please do.
Say the girls were kidnapped by whoever. Maybe they were tossed in a van. Actually, my thought is that they went exploring in the woods, or they were taken to that barn there on the back of the property very well.
Right.
If you take a cell phone, especially
We're talking
back
about
then,
Brad's or
yeah,
Ron's property.
Brad's.
Okay.
And if you take a cell phone into a building with a metal roof, you're going to lose signal almost instantly, but you can still sometimes get it in there. And part of the data that the new witness brought forward was that the headphone was inserted into the phone seconds after an incoming phone call started.
Yeah.
And so to me, it just sounds like, okay, either she still held the phone in her hand and she was trying to quickly silence it, or people
Oh,
that had them as captors were like, oh, silence the damn phone, and didn't know how to. They're not iPhone people, and they
yes.
stuck the headphone in there to shut it up. That's just kind of where my conspiratorial theory type brain goes to. Like, why would they have stuck a headphone in there for 5 hours?
Yes. Go
I've
ahead.
seen there's also jammers that have auxiliary cord plugins, something
Oh,
to prevent you from getting to the tower.
Here, so let me just read this small synopsis just for this one witness, because I think it's very important for anybody who may not be aware. So this was on day 16, okay? And this is a defense witness, okay? And let me add, never once did the state introduce this in their case, give a reason, acknowledge it at all. This has all come from all of the things that are not adding up regarding Libby's cell phone has come from defense. And I think it's going to be a big issue that state does not have an answer for this. Okay. But it says, so we have Eldridge. She left the FBI. She's now a licensed private detective in Nebraska. She tells the jury that she used to have a license in Celebrite, and that's the software used to forensically examine cell phones. She has testified 3 times for the government, and she owns a private business called Silicon Prairie Cyber Services. She is being paid $300 per hour to testify. She has worked 65 hours in examination for this case and 15 hours prepping for testimony. So she has reviewed the October 2017 cell phone extraction, as well as the Cellbrite report and the report from Chris Cecil. So Chris Cecil was up on the stand as a state witness. She also says she's reviewed Cecil's deposition. So she tells the jury that ISP used Cellbrite, Axiom, and other forensic tools to examine Libby's phone. Eldred says she primarily used Axiom and used 2 others. She explained to the jury that every tool can do the work a little differently or display it differently. So an extraction is getting all the data off a phone so you can examine it later. Eldridge says everything she examined came from ISP. There are 3 level 6 extractions you could do. Each of them pulls different amounts of info. She explains that logical extraction covers the basic user information, and that's what Libby's phone had in early 2017. So Eldridge says ISP had the capacity in early 2017 to do a full extraction of Libby's phone, but only did it in October of that year.
Why
You
didn't they
would
do
think
that?
that would be one of the first things they'd want to do, right?
Right? Because we all know from watching trials that the sooner you do the most on anything forensically, it's going to be your best bet because it's like it's closer to the event, you're going to get the most amount of data, like all that stuff. They dropped the ball big time on this one.
They dropped the ball massively, and especially given the age and everything happens with social media, and social media played a direct role in the crime this day. That is where Bridge Guy was captured, allegedly Richard Allen, right? And so
Mhm.
you would think we need to get into these girls' phone, especially with everything that was going on with the Shots account, right? The Anthony Shots and everything.
Yeah.
Let's get in there and let's see what's going on. Were these girls planning on meeting someone? How didn't they immediately go for this? I won't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't either. I
It's
truly
it's
don't.
it seems like when they didn't know the answers, they didn't go further to try to obtain them or debunk stuff. And I think that goes across a lot of different aspects of this case and evidence that I personally find frustrating. And I mean, had maybe they not have fired the freaking FBI, they could have gotten some help from them.
I was just thinking that, like, why would you fire the people that have the capability to do some of this stuff? And I
And
can
wh-
only come up with a few reasons for that. None of them are good.
and why not allow the geofencing in? The three people that were around the crime scene the time of the murders that the
Mhm.
state has in their timeline around the murders. So
Yeah.
there's so many questions here.
Have you ever heard of the FBI being fired?
No,
No.
not kicked off of such a complex case. I have not.
Right. Okay. So this is where it gets into the meat and potatoes, guys. So it says that Eldridge tells the jury that the fact that they didn't do that caused issues, and it caused the loss of a specific piece of data called the current power log. She tells the jury that log only stays saved in between a phone being turned all the way off and on. Eldridge says that the log can also say if the phone went into airplane mode, so they lost all of that. She said her priority was figuring out what was going on with the phone at 4:34 a.m. on February 14th to make the phone receive multiple text messages. So again, if you weren't here at that last live, the state's case, the murders happened within an hour. If we're playing devil's advocate and believing what they're saying, that means that Libby's phone was underneath Abby's body from, let's say, like 3:30, okay? 3:30 until when they were found. So the fact that between a little after 5 p.m. all the way until 4:30 a.m. the next morning, the phone's not active. There's nothing happening with the phone, but at 4:34 a.m., all of a sudden, the phone becomes active and starts receiving a bunch of text messages. Bing, 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 bing. The only time that ever happens with my phone is if I'm out of service, it's not able to get service, and then all of a sudden I go into service and my phone is overloading with all of the messages
Mm-hmm.
that I've missed. But this phone should not have been moved. This phone should be stationary underneath Abby's body. Go ahead, Jay.
Just to answer a little red, the last biometric read to attempt to open the phone was shortly after 2:30, whenever the girl's quote unquote abduction happened. So, to our knowledge, no, I mean, those messages weren't read. And I mean, she'll confirm in here in a little bit, but the iPad that they obtained from Libby's home was not connected, and
Mm.
the data that Stacy Eldridge is going over is specific to the device itself, not to the iCloud.
So we had speculated, because Shay had said at the last live, well, is it possible we know Libby's family was trying to access via her iPad where they were, what was going on? Is it possible during that time, did it prevent messages from going through to her actual cell phone? And I thought that was a very good theory. Well, we got confirmation now. No, They were not synced up. It was not the same iCloud account. So that eliminates the one possible theory, in my opinion, that even made sense.
Yeah, there's so many things they could have done with this phone, like right off the bat. Like, I feel like the Cecil, who was the state's witness and with ISP that analyzed the phone data, like some key things, like would you not have confirmed if the phone was wet, got wet, had water damage? Like,
Right?
I know we're going to get more into this, but like there's just so many things that I'm over here going, why weren't these things addressed? Why did you not ever eliminate some of this? Like, as part of your theory, did the girls cross, Deer Creek or not? Like, this is a bigger part of the investigation that I just will never understand why they didn't go the extra mile.
Seems very shoddy in my opinion, because
Very.
make no mistake, this is I know one of those detectives on the stand was asked like how many of these, I keep saying the words on here, sorry MJ,
No,
but
you're fine.
how many of these murders scenes have you investigated? And his was, this is the only one. So like this was a huge deal in Carroll
Mhm.
County and for some of the police and detectives working it. So you would think, I guess maybe they get a pass a little bit off of ignorance, but you would also think, wow, this is a big situation. This, now we have a double murder. We've never had anything like this before. They would want to be doing everything by the book to the best of their ability, calling in the FBI right away or backup resources, even from ISP, things like that, to make sure they're following everything to a T. And it just feels like either they didn't or they're hiding something. That's how it comes across to me.
Yeah.
I could not agree more. Absolutely.
Can I add like just two topics that I'm seeing kind of come up in chat? Like
Yes.
maybe
Don't ask.
we could talk
Go
on these
for it.
after we're done with this.
Yes.
But they're asking about DNA and then the bullet ballistics and the testing. So if we could
I
just
wrote
kind
it.
of go over theirs after this.
Yes. If you got, I wrote it down, but if you guys have anything specific as far as you want us to talk about, just leave the comment and I will star it and we will circle back. That's a good question, Becky. And I think that we should discuss exactly that. Is it corruption or ineptitude? So I think they should do it every time, Neat Noodle. I really do, because clarifying questions, at least for me, make all of the difference. All of the difference. We saw it with Letitia Stout trial. That was the first time I really saw. I was like, oh my God, wow, like this is amazing. And I think they should always allow jury questions.
Which one, Elizabeth? Because most of the ones that they had on stand were still active, but they may be in different positions. Like um Levensey was the sheriff at the time, and I believe he's now an investigator for the attorney's office, right, Deets? And isn't that the role he moved into?
Yeah, sorry, I was feeding the beast.
Oh,
By
sorry.
that I mean the dogs, but yes, you are
Yeah.
correct.
And they even brought in Carter, which I had like all the respect for Carter at the beginning of this. So it gets really interesting. But yeah, keep reading, because I think this right here is so important
It
because
is,
it
yeah.
dismantles that timeline and it's forcing the state to shift it. And what they did next is just mind blowing to me this day of trial.
Yeah. Well, and I think again, like not to sound redundant, but it is so massive when we're talking about a timeline and the state's timeline. And so you can't just kind of, well, okay, maybe, maybe something like that happened. Maybe this, maybe that. No, like you have to really go by what the state is saying, and you can't really allow, oh, okay, well, maybe this could have happened, maybe that. No, it has to go by what they have. The burden of proof is on them. And so, like Shay
Exactly.
mentioned earlier on, the defense is explaining how their timeline of things are gonna have to change depending on what we bring forward. And it shouldn't. None of that should
Mm-mm.
be happening.
They should be able to say this happened if they're going to accuse a man for a double
Yes.
homicide. They should be able to say this happened at this time and we're going to prove to you how. And like the defense stated, they didn't. They shifted. They shifted all over the place.
Sure did.
They would bring forth one witness testifying to something, and it's like they wanted you to believe that witness, but then when another one of their own state's witnesses contradicted it, but it worked in, like, well, part of their testimony contradicted it, but the other part of their testimony works in their favor in this spot. Well, then they want you to pay attention to that witness. And it's like, wait, that doesn't work out though. She saw a comet, not a car like Richard Allen's, but they needed the other piece of her testimony. So it became very sloppy, in my opinion, from what we've heard.
It did. Absolutely. Okay. So Eldridge says that the log can also say if the phone went into airplane mode, another thing that we lost. She said her priority was figuring out what was going on with the phone at 4:34 a.m. on February 14th to make the phone start receiving multiple text messages. Judge Gull calls for a sidebar after the prosecution says that they had not examined an exhibit showing Eldridge's report on Libby's phone database. First, they say they have not examined the exhibit, then they have no objection. So whatever it is, they figured it out. Eldridge leaves the witness stand and goes to a screen showing the report. She explains that many of the columns and the rows, and the reporter describes the exhibit as similar to an Excel spreadsheet. Eldridge says she generally agrees with the state's expert examination of the timeline of Libby's phone, but there are things she does not agree with. She says she does not agree with some of the times, some of the texts, calls, FaceTimes that were delivered between February 13th and 14th. Eldridge tells the jury there were times on the 13th and the 14th that the phone was not connected to a cell tower. She says the last time it connected on the 13th was at 5:45 p.m. and it reconnected at 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. Now, again, just to reiterate, state's timeline, the girls would have been murdered at this point and Richard Allen would have been gone. Okay? She tells the jury she reviewed cell phone pings from AT&T. She shows AT&T historical precision location logs. The state objects and points out that Eldridge does not have training on the network capability in Carroll County. They say the log is incomplete and Eldridge is not qualified. Defense attorney Jennifer Aguirre says the page admitted into evidence is the one pertinent to the investigation, but there are several hundred more. Gull admits the exhibit over the state's objection. Eldridge says Libby's phone last connection time was February 14th, which is the next day, guys, at 4:33 a.m. And before that was 5:45 p.m. on February 13th. She says the phone was not using data in between those times. Cecil's report said there were messages coming through during that time frame. Eldridge says there is evidence that the phone did not have messages delivered in between those times. So again, what would prevent messages from being delivered when that phone is stationary?
It's almost like the ping. I don't know if any of you are from a rural area, but sometimes this happens when you're out. Like if you go mushroom hunting or you're out in the woods, like you won't have a signal, and then boom, like the wind shifts the trees, or just, I don't know, the gods have spoken, and you get a tiny signal. And it's almost like that ping that they kept pushing out, like finally initiated some sort of signal at 4:34?
Well,
4:33.
I'm the type where
Weird.
I look at it collectively. And so is that possible for a phone to be stationary and have service go in and out? Yeah, I guess.
Well,
Like it's not unheard of, but when you're putting everything together and with the auxiliary now, no, what's the likelihood that all of these factors together?
so let me ask you guys this, because I'm not my cell phone expertise comes from the FBI experts who have testified in
Yes,
Gannon's trial, in
me
Murdoch's
too.
trial, and now this one. So that's kind of where I pull some of this from, but I don't know the answer to this. If if you don't have a signal at all, it's not on airplane mode, but you have no signal
Mhm.
whatsoever, does Apple Health still log?
Yes.
Okay. What did it back in 2017? Because remember, Apple Health would have been not brand new, but relatively new, right? In
That's
2017.
that's a good question.
So that's my curiosity. Like if they did have it, if it was in a van, if it was in a shed, if it was somewhere else and there was no signal to it, was the Apple Health still recording at that time in 2017? Because then that might help us to determine like
Well,
why no movement was logged.
didn't she say that kind of, well, the only thing I heard her say about the movement would be if it was in a car, it wouldn't
Or it
register.
wouldn't
Right.
Yeah.
even register. Yeah.
Right.
Can can I answer Elizabeth real quick?
Please
Sorry, because
do.
I wanted to make sure I did.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth Lander, sweetie, I double checked. Is that it was actually Leanzaby. A juror asked how many previous murders he had personally investigated. None was his response.
Oh, was someone questioning my comp? Yeah, no, I heard it.
Yeah, no, I know we both did, but I was like, I
Yeah.
couldn't remember if it was Mullen or Leanzaby, so I wanted to double check.
Hmm.
So she asked
Yeah.
exactly which one was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
I,
was an
I still
iPhone.
think for,
Mhm.
Carroll County, Indiana, they're just not going to have a lot of major crime like that. Thank goodness. That's one of the beautiful things about living in those areas is, crimes like this are pretty much unheard of.
Yeah. Well, and Deadeye
But
Danny,
that's
it could
such,
be a 6S, but the updates, you have to remember, like, you have an older phone and it's updating depending, you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily, everything
Hmm.
isn't always, well, what type of phone was it, at least with Apple, because you could update apps.
yeah. Did you read the part where they go, or have you gotten to the part where they talk, where they bring back in Cecil after this?
Where he
No.
Googles? Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
that's like the best. Sorry, I just want to hear you say it.
No. Okay. So Eldridge says that some of those messages did have timestamps in between the two times, but they weren't delivered. She said voicemails between the two times were not delivered until February 17th. So like February 17th, too. That's days later. Aguar asks Eldridge to explain what a ping is. She says it's a technical way to have one device see if another device is there. AT&T is repeatedly, this is what I found interesting too. AT&T is repeatedly trying to ping Libby's phone after 5:54 p.m. on February 13th, but is not successful again until 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. Eldridge says she doesn't know why the phone did not ping in that time frame, even though it was under Abby's back and was stationary. She says, I quote, I can only conclude something external happened to the phone, that it could have been moved, blocked by metal, or have been blocked by the tower. Eldridge is asked about the phone's health data. She says she agrees with what Cecil found about the data on the steps. She says iPhones will not log steps if you are in a car or if the phone is powered off. Eldridge says she now knows that at 5:45, 44 seconds p.m. on February 13th to 10:32 p.m. that night, the phone had wired headphones plugged in. Bombshell, in my opinion. She demonstrates headphones being plugged in to an iPhone 6S. She says it could have also been an auxiliary cord for a car that was plugged into the phone. I cannot think of any explanation that does not involve humans, she tells the jury. Eldridge says that right before the headphones were plugged in, there was an incoming call. She says the headphones would have stopped that call. So I'll stop right there
Right.
because
That's what I was
would
talking
it
about
have
earlier.
stopped the
Yeah.
call or would it have caused the
It would have
call to
made
go
the call
through?
go through the headphones. I don't think it'll
Right.
stop it, but it would it would silence it.
I,
Hmm.
that is, and so I was waiting, state, are you going to put, you need to answer, like if I was a juror, you need to answer this for me. Give me an explanation. We got none.
Um, what do you, okay, so we know another thing that a phone could be put in to stop it from it doesn't have to be powered down or anything, would be like a Faraday bag. Do you think that a person who services ATMs might have something like that?
Explain it one more time.
Like a Faraday bag, like the bag that you put electronic devices in, it basically stops all signal from reaching them. It's basically like putting them in a metal box, but it's not,
It's what it's what you're supposed to do whenever you're collecting the evidence. You're supposed to
Yes.
put the phone in airplane mode and then put it in a Faraday bag. It's like a military grade blocking bag.
But and I don't know, would someone who like I don't know what anybody else would use a Faraday bag for besides investigators for forensic tools. So I don't know if like the everyday human's gonna have them, but you can purchase them because I went and searched this. You can get them off Amazon if you want.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I was just trying to think of like reasons why, someone in that area might need something like that. Because it is perplexing. This part is very perplexing for me. It's kind of, I think it's going to cause a lot of confusion with the jury and with those that are listening as to what happened to this phone in this time frame, which the defense told us in their opening statements. We're going to learn that human hands were on that phone, alive human hands were on that phone at two different points that the state is not pointing out to us. And we did learn that. Like,
Yeah.
Melissa
Hmm.
says it's the bombshell moment for her, but the fact remains, someone plugged something into that jack and unplugged it from that jack.
Well,
Why?
and according to the state, the girls were already deceased.
Right, long
Like
deceased
they're
at that
saying they were
point.
deceased by 3:30. So this plug into the jack is just weird to me. And the whole thing with how Cecil went into the lobby and Google searched and tried to like
Yes.
give the evidence. That's what I was waiting for you to get to because I was like,
Explain, please.
I think it's in the article too, if you want to read it. But yeah, basically, so they bring Cecil back in, who was the person to initially go over these reports, and um, he's talking through. I guess they asked him like why that would be, and he's mentioned that it could be water or dirt, and coming to that, his source was that on cross examination with the defense that he Googled it, and he was pretty much ridiculed by the defense because when you're Googling things, it's usually a user forum. It's not like
It's
an
like a help
analyst
forum.
perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not like an analyst.
it's like what we can all get. Like if I were to Google like, "Oh, my phone's acting up this way. What should I do?" You're going to get, Apple's help forum or maybe even a Reddit chat or something. But you're right, Shay. Like it was so funny how the defense attorney, like I can never say her name right, but she like read him for filth, and she's like, "What do you normally use to, compile your reports and blah blah blah?" And he's like, "Peer peer reviews."
Yeah,
And
not
she's like,
right.
Yeah.
"Is that
Yeah.
on Google?" And he's like, "No." And then like the next witness up, she only asked two questions of the next witness, and one of them was like, "Did you Google anything on the break?" I was dead.
Yeah. Because
Gavel, get
then,
up here.
yeah, I sent you the link, Gavel, privately, but I just dropped the link again. Would love to have you up. That, like, this, I don't, like, I'm with what Joneson said because, and Joneson, you're more than welcome to join too. Joneson said this testimony alone, would be, I don't know what word she used, but like, I have serious issue. This is, unless you can give me some other logical explanation. But according to your guys' timeline, it is so tight. We're dealing with an hour. What do you mean something plugged in to a phone that is supposed to be underneath Abby? Both girls would be gone by now, and stationary, unmoved. What they
Like
like?
what? Basically 2 hours after the state alleges the girls were
Yes.
murdered and he's gone, something's plugged into their phone?
And there's no headphones, and I could even rationalize were headphones found there just like unplugged, like nothing.
Nope.
There's nothing that should be like, what do you mean?
And if you want to go like I'm just gonna go all the steps further and why that to me this proves also that fact that Richard Allen is factually innocent is the defense is weighing heavily on him being there, his clothing, the bullet, and the confessions, which we'll get into later, but just in the confessions piece alone, they're holding on to this piece that around 2:30, Brad Weber comes home in this van. It scares him because he was going to essay the girl, and then he kills them.
But
But all this stuff is
so he's so scared by a van, Shay. Like this
Mhm.
van terrifies him, which would I don't even know if he'd be in the right position to see the van. Let's not even mention the fact that if Brad Weber raced home after work, he wouldn't get there until after the time of
The
the
state's
state's
case.
timeline for death. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So he wouldn't even be there. But say this does happen. Let's take their
right.
their case in and present it as okay. So this van scares Richard Allen from um, harming the girls in the manner that the state alleges he wanted to harm them,
Right.
and causes him to push them across the creek up, and then he does the deed over there, and he spends like an hour and 20 minutes like doing the crime, and they called it what, an undoing, like trying to cover it but not really covering it, and then he has to be up on that road muddy and bloody for what's her face to see him. How does that, like, why would he spend an hour and 20 some minutes there if he's so scared? That's what I don't understand.
Well, yeah, just the whole Bojack thing, and poor Linda. I understand that that could be an option, but this is where I'm seeing that the investigator should have been buttoned up, and they should have provided whether the phone had water damage or not to that extent. And I don't feel like they factually put that into evidence. Did you, Deets?
No, not at all. Not when you're out Googling. Like, they had this evidence the whole time. Make no mistake.
7 years.
I wish that the defense was able to explain or would have taken the time to explain to the jury as well as to those of us listening in via the reporters that they base I think they would have answered the defense probably would have answered a lot more questions had they had the resources to do so. You have to
Yes,
remember
that's what
Mhm.
I
they
said.
had very limited resources. The judge did not approve on a lot of the resources. They even had to crowdfund for some of the things that they were able to get. So they could only afford this witness to review the
From
report.
from
If
the
they had
GoFundMe.
yeah, if they had unlimited funds, I bet we would have found out a lot more, but the state should have been
Time and
doing that.
funds. Yep.
The state should have done that. If they spent 4 million on this case, why didn't the state tell us more? Why didn't they dig deeper? They had that report for 7 years and they decide to go and Google on the break what could have caused
Yep.
that headphone to be plugged
Like,
in?
well, it just goes to show this isn't the first time that the state's witnesses have gone and done something after the jury questions things. They
Mhm.
did it right when they asked how many focuses were in the area, and they didn't run that
Yes,
report.
that's
And then
so
Mullins gets
true.
back on stand. It's like, you
He's
guys, you
like, "You
shouldn't.
guys brought up a great question, so I went ahead and looked that up." Like, you
Mhm.
had to have a jury from Allen County ask you that question before you decided to do that would have been like
It,
I couldn't help but think of Idaho in that situation. Like, what were they doing?
yes.
They were Googling or not Googling, they were pulling, the DMV records for makes and models surrounding that car that they had, like, instantly, within days, that's what they were pulling, and Indiana needed a juror to ask them that question before they went and researched
Uh,
that. I was
but
dumbfounded.
So okay, Dees, I'll go further on this one because I think that I from the collective like review of the notes that have come in from people that have been there, from legal analysts to news media to journalists, has been that uh, there hasn't been any there hasn't been any footage shown, and it's only been a picture of the Ford Focus. And that, like, the okay, so my two footages are, I wanted to see the Mears Farm footage, and I also would like to see the trail cam footage. What the
The
fuck was
trail
going on there?
cam. I wanna see
Those
that trail
two.
cam footage.
Yes, those two right there. But say let's go back to the Mears Farm footage, and you're able to see those cars, and you're saying that um as you are interviewing your state witnesses that are listed in your PCA that describe your bridge guy, and you're identifying their vehicles of when they say they were on this road. Did you identify every damn vehicle? Because if you knew there was a Ford Focus then why weren't you at Richard Allen's house like the first week of this?
Mhm.
I just don't
Because
get it.
remember, he came forward, and I know a lot of people say that And this has happened. We've seen this happen in true crime cases, that people will, interject themselves into a case to keep close tabs on law enforcement and what they're doing. Like the guilty person will do that. He didn't do that. He called and said, "Yeah, I was there that day. If you want to interview me, maybe I can, give you some info that I had." Does an interview in the parking lot with that detective, and then someone in his family Googled some things about it throughout the course of those 7 years, which I think somebody in Reddit matched it up. It's pretty shortly
Who
after they're
who in
doing
Delphi
the
wouldn't be
river
doing
searches.
this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's to be fair. Yeah.
so many would be. But it's not like he was actively following law enforcement and asking them and, pounding them like, "Oh, what do you know? What do you know? I was there that day, so fill me in." Like, that didn't happen. It was just honestly think that if he is found guilty, one of the takeaways from this will be that it's too fucking sorry, I didn't mean to say that. It's too freaking
What?
scary to present yourself as a good Samaritan in this country anymore, because you might get a crime pinned on you if you do.
Yeah. And yeah, it's too fucking scary. It's
It
terrifying.
is. It
But
is.
that's what I'm terrified right now, because if I was a juror and you are not supposed to take the weight of, oh, what happens if we find him not guilty? Like, you look at, they've been watching those families in that courtroom every day. The impact of when the autopsy photos are on the screen. If you're going to act, listen, we're human. We're not supposed to take that into account when factoring our decision. But are we going to pretend they won't? The male jurors were in tears, their heads in the palms of their hands. That's the reactions were being relayed. Are we going to act like that weight is not sitting on them when making this decision? And
Mhm.
I am terrified at the idea, could that be a reason someone would find him guilty? If they think he's guilty, that's fine, but would someone submit to the emotions and stress of, I can't give this family, like, not not a guilty verdict?
I think that's gonna weigh heavy on their hearts. But I hope that the jury seems extremely intelligent, right? Based on the questions that they have asked throughout this trial. And so
Yeah,
I hope that they're intelligent enough to realize that that's not true justice for the family. And it sounds
right.
like the family doesn't want that either. Like, if this is not the guy, we don't want you to accuse him. Like, just based on what we've heard the family doing for Kathy Allen in the courtroom.
Oh, they've been
Like,
bringing banana bread. They apparently they have such
No, I don't
a
know what they've done for Kathy.
well, there was a day that the court just basically stole a couple of Kathy's seats, and allegedly, Patty was working very hard to move people around to get Kathy her allotted amount of seats. And to me,
Oh,
that takes a lot for her to do. I don't know if it takes a lot for her to do, but it shows the true integrity of that woman.
well,
Like,
and apparently the decorum
it's
in the
admirable.
courtroom is extremely respectful. It
Yeah.
is, like, and that's all I could wait. I can't imagine. I don't want to imagine, but the fact that it's not like a clear one side, other side, that there
Mhm.
is not, I want these families to have peace, and even in this horrific circumstance of this trial, like, if there can be as much peace in that courtroom as there can be, that's what I
Yeah,
wish. So I'm happy to.
that's what, I don't watch this creator a lot anymore when it comes to this trial, but Lauren did mention that she asked one of her note takers who had made it into the room with her one day, who hadn't been there for the whole trial. She's like, "What's something I can relay to my audience that I haven't
Yes.
conveyed to them?"
Yes.
And the note taker told her the decorum in the courtroom, how she thought going into it, it would be this giant divide of Allens versus the families, and it's not like that at all. Like, everybody is cohesively
ah,
getting along. There doesn't seem to be, an anger amongst them and whatnot. And I thought that was a very important
Yeah,
thing to mention. It really was.
it was.
yeah. I,
Um,
I think that, like, just if you kind of just like take it back a little bit, um, like some of the heavy hitters that, you know, outside of like kind of the state of like the proximity of Richard being there, some of the state's witnesses, when I'm going through some of the evidence, was that there was no the DNA. Like, can we talk the DNA? Because I think this is a big thing too. And it is going to be a hot topic when we talk Koberger, because a lot of people have
Mhm.
questions about, like, there being no DNA of the victims, allegedly at
So,
this point that
my
we know.
opinion might shock you based on the fact that I've already proclaimed that I don't think that he is factually guilty. I think he's factually innocent. I don't think so. We put so much emphasis in this country on DNA. Like it is the end all be all. It is the only like
Hmm.
it we
It's
just
still
put so
circumstantial.
much on DNA. And I think that because we have put so much on DNA in our trial process, that when it's not there, we're like, oh, see, he's not the guy. There's no DNA whatsoever. Is it alarming to me that there's no DNA at all? Absolutely. I do think that had he truly been Muddy Bloody guy, they would have found some sort of DNA in his car because you can't hide that once it is there. But I'm also not shocked that they didn't find any DNA at the crime scene. I think it's possible to commit a crime and not leave DNA behind.
I am, and I said the same thing with Koberger. I can accept none of the killer's DNA at the crime scene, but I'd be
Yes.
less likely to accept none of the victim's DNA
In the
wherever
vehicle,
the
yeah.
killer went.
Exactly. I'm with you on that one. That's why I'm very shocked.
Hmm.
Like, unless he was, in a Tyvek suit that he quickly hid, which they would have found, because you got to remember he's all. But then we hear the eyewitness testimony that he's on the road and muddy and bloody. Like, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I would be shocked that they didn't find one speck of the victim's DNA in his vehicle had he committed the crime.
Well,
Yeah.
we've got to talk a bit about the prison psychologist. So we're going to talk about the confessions and how these confessions came about while been given involuntary Halidol, right? But
I
then we're going to talk about the fucking psychiatrist, period, and what
mm,
she was doing, because that is the second bombshell, in my opinion. And when I say bombshell, like too big for me not to see anything other.
you can't ignore it. You
You
can't
can't
ignore
ignore
it.
it.
And I do agree that this right here, this topic that we're about to go into, is where probably 99% of the division is stemming from is these confessions. Like those that are like, "Oh, he's
Yes.
guilty. It's because of the confessions." And then like there's no gray area with these confessions with people. It's like he's guilty of sin because of the confessions, or it's like they were coerced. I get tongue tied. They were forced confessions. Like there's no middle ground with anyone on this.
Yeah. And Chief, no, nobody's asked yet, but like that's part of my thing that I hate that's been kept out is the Keegan Klein and Anthony Schott stuff, because I think it's huge. It's a huge deal in the timeline, in my opinion, with Libby's interaction with him.
I think they had Keegan Klein on the witness list. I think that the defense, honestly, hearing all the objections that they've had to endure, I think they either hit a wall or they realized, we can't even bother with some of this. There's no way we're
So,
getting it in. There's no way we can get these people in. Judge isn't going to go for us. They're not letting us pursue the third party culpability. Like, I think they,
uh,
realized what they could work with on that.
I could be wrong, but I think because I heard they were also working through Elvis Field's warrant as well, or sorry,
Yeah.
subpoena as well.
Well, they wanted
Is
to issue a warrant. Yeah.
my understanding though is even though the judge is not allowing them to go over those topics, um, they still have to go through the records for appeals. And I think, in my
Hmm.
opinion, that's why Keegan, Elvis, and the others were still listed in there. They were hoping that the judge would allow them to bring in that evidence, and she just no. And I feel like the state opened the door many times.
They did.
And I
Flat
was
out.
like, this is effing bullshit. I was
They
pissed.
they opened the door with the undoing when the one witness testified to it being an undoing. That right there opened the door into the Odinism stuff. They
Oh,
opened
with
the
the blood
door.
spatter specialist?
Yes, the blood splatter, they opened the door there. They opened the door with the body wasn't moved by anyone, or and then gave a plausible reasoning as to why the body was moved, which honestly wasn't plausible in my opinion. They opened the door there. There was a couple others I can't think of off the top of my head, but yes, there was lots of times I felt like the door was opened. But
Yeah, and they had to
Judge
list them
Gold
in those
slammed that door
amendments.
back in their face.
Oh my God. Sorry, can I sidebar for just a quick second?
Go for it.
Absolutely.
Years ago, I reached out to Harold. And if you don't know who Harold is, have you ever seen that hilarious clip of the infomercial where it's like, you got to lock your ladder, and this ladder can even go, like this way. And like the woman is like, like, careful, Harold, like, because it's getting unsturdy. He's like, no, it's locked. And then he goes to walk over it and the whole thing collapses. He busts his face, but they're live on the air. And he's like, I'm all right, like, and that, it wasn't locked. Do you know that infomercial?
No, but it sounds hilarious.
What?
I
Okay.
know.
So I was known, like, at the beginning of the channel for just laughing, basically for like a 2-hour live, wheezing, just because I cannot get over that damn clip. And I reached out to Harold years ago to ask him, hey, would you ever come on for an interview? Like, to say, he just opened that message. He's like, hi, I just found your message. And
Oh my God.
Just messaged me back.
Well, the important question is he going to come on?
I don't know. Like, this was literally years. This is May 5th, 2022. And he's like, hey, it's Harold.
It's Harold.
I just saw your message. Okay. And so I just had to share that because I am like fangirling and I think that's the funniest shit.
That is too funny.
And maybe Harold, I can't believe you never. I'll go send you that clip privately. It is the funniest thing in the world. But either way,
I've never heard of it.
What? To lock your ladder?
I've never heard of it either. You're gonna have to play it for us.
I mean,
you don't have to now, but you're gonna.
No,
have to
don't
play
mind.
it
It's a very quick clip, but don't mind if I do.
Well, you can have a palate cleanser.
Yes.
Yeah, here's a palate cleanser. Oh my God, I can't believe you guys don't know this clip. So I got such a kick out of it. I found Harold. I reached out to him.
You're dying.
It's the funniest fucking clip you'll ever see because it's live. It was live on the air. Oh my God.
What a blend. I'm not sure why fanny packs are being mentioned in the chat in connection to the crime, but
it's because the bridge guy, the little side, people were trying to figure it out.
Some people think it's a fanny pack.
I think it may be a gun holster. I thought about that.
Could be. But fanny packs started to come back into fashion around 2015, 2016. That's like they were very popular.
So, I mean, I don't even
they
think
still are now, but that's about when they started back up.
I don't think fashion matters when you're older to do what we do.
Not at all. Not at all. But I saw the comment about like, oh, you must not have been around for the 80s. Like, yeah, they were big in the 80s and 90s, but then they just like 2016, 15, 16, like they started making that big resurgent with fanny packs, like, because I only know this because of course I got a Lululemon one around that time.
So. No, you did not.
Of course
you have a fanny pack.
Well, it's called a belt bag now. Yes.
I love fanny packs.
I wear it as a shoulder bag most of the time, but yeah. But
These, I love you.
Kid you not,
love you.
Fanny packs are a must when you go to like Disney or Universal or something. They're the best thing ever. Just saying.
All right, so we're doing a palate cleanser, and yes, K-Rays, we're doing a palate cleanser. It has nothing to do with Delphi, but just for a quick minute. It's 55 seconds. This was live on air. This is Harold, and they were trying to sell one of these ladders. As you can see, this ladder is supposed to be versatile. It's supposed to go up.
When is this from?
Like the 80s? I don't know.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a ladder that you can, I don't know why you would ever need to walk across a ladder like that, but I digress. So here's Harold.
It's a very easy situation to operate. You just push the buttons in right here on the two sides. There are two little buttons. And all you do is push them in.
Okay, there we go.
It's a very easy situation to operate. You just push the buttons in right here on the two sides. There are two little buttons. And all you do is push them in, and that will release it. And right here, push the button in, that releases it. And then after you let go, it locks firmly in place. So really, you're all set. And this is tough. It is. Listen, give you an example. Say you have you have to get up on the wall, high ceiling, vault the ceiling. Hey, listen, just walk right up. And I tell you, it's very safe, it's durable, and it's
Harold, you're
lightweight.
scaring me.
So really, now it's locked in place, okay? So really, you say,
Oh God, Harold, are you okay?
actually, I didn't have it locked. You have to lock it. Once you lock it, you're okay.
Actually, I didn't have it locked.
Oh my God, the way that the TV crew were handling that like pros, they instantly just went to a picture of
Yo, that shit bent, and then he's like, "Now it's locked." And then,
now it's locked, and he stayed in character the whole time.
you're gonna do a V down. That means it's locked, and then
Oh my gosh! I hope Harold comes on. I'm dying for that now.
So
Yo.
why are you wanting to interview Harold? What's the question?
just years ago, like I don't know, like I could not get. I wasn't like full true crime yet. I don't know what I was doing on my channel, and so I just watched that infomercial. Someone made me an intro, a theme song based on Lock Your Ladder, and so one day we found him, and I reached out, and I don't even remember. I said, "Here, hey Harold, my name is Melissa. I have a small channel. My audience absolutely loves the ladder infomercial and was wondering if you'd be interested in coming on panel to discuss your experience. Let me know. Either way, thanks for the many laughs." 2 years later, he messages back.
He's like,
Melissa.
"Sorry, Melissa, I just got up off the floor, but I'd love to come on your channel."
Beats mic drop.
Melissa, hey, it's Harold. Believe it or not, I just saw your note from May 5th, 2022. I must have overlooked it when it was sent. Sorry for the late reply. I'm quite amazed at all the continued attention that clip gets, as well as my appearance on Comedy Central Tosh O show. I had nothing to do with that old clip from CVN being posted. I appreciate your reaching out to me for your show. So
I have to
still-
look him up on the Tosh show.
I'll
Oh my
still have
God.
Harold on with pride. I will have him on. So
You
I
should be
just
like,
Tosh 2.0?
yeah, I love Tosh.
I just
So
want to
you
make sure Harold's okay. All right. It was a rough hit.
you can reply back to him. My channel has grown quite a bit, so you're gonna have a bigger audience to talk to
Just
now.
a wee bit. He's handsome now. He's handsome.
Is
But yeah, so I just had to share that. So but okay. So the confessions, I agree 100%. This is where, if we're going by again, all right, what's leaning more towards guilt? I'm very well aware that false confessions occur. The
Yes.
fact that it is numerous confessions, I don't like it. But I do think the conditions are a huge point of discussion. And the
Yeah.
fact that he was administered Halidol. And so my question is anyone aware what Halidol will do to someone who is not? See, I don't know which way they're going really with it, because if he wasn't having a psychotic break and he was, I don't know.
It's like they want both, right, Melissa?
Yes, it's
You've
like
got
they
the
want
they
both.
have the they put the this is what I'm talking about, like where their witnesses don't flow cohesively. They
Right,
put the guards up there to testify he was faking it
right.
and
And
putting on a
malingering.
show for attention
Right.
and all that. But then you have the doctor who prescribed the Halidol saying, "Oh no, it was very real." So it's like, which is it? Like, which
Right.
one
If
are
he
we
was
supposed to believe?
malingering, which is like faking the illness, faking these episodes, which they had his doctor come on and say he wasn't faking it at all, which I understand, like whichever witness is going to be for the defense versus state, they're going to more lean towards things that are for that side. But if you administer Haldol, because I don't really understand what their argument here. No, I don't like administering medication to someone who is not willing. But if we're to believe he was having psychosis and you administered an antipsychotic, during that time, there were also confessions, but then he got better. So are we going with he was experiencing psychosis and he needed it and the Haldol aided? Or are we going with he shouldn't have been administered and because of the Haldol, he could have had these false confessions? I'm a bit confused with it.
And honestly, they never pointed which they really wanted people to believe. So I think they kind of left that open-ended on purpose because honestly, I think if you had one word for the state's case in chief, it would be confusion. Because that's all we have gotten from their whole case is confusion. And this is another perfect example of that. I think it was intentional to, like, putting all these different witnesses and experts up to discuss it in the manner in which they did leads to confusion.
Yes. Well, and yes, Smiley, Mr. Allen has had known mental health issues with depression and anxiety, and then he was diagnosed with, and I don't remember the exact terminology, but like
Separation.
codependence. Yeah,
Yeah.
very codependent. And so that is a factor in what would even make someone who may not struggle with that go absolutely crazy in the conditions he was in, because please remember, he was also in a prison. Even though he was not convicted, he was held in solitary. The lights never went off. Listen, you have an internal clock, okay?
Mhm.
And your brain and body knows lights on daytime when I am up, dark is when you're supposed to rest and your body's supposed to go to sleep. Having lights on 24/7 is also used as a form of torture, correct. Lights on 24/7, noise going 24/7, because it really messes up your internal clock, which
Is
messes
it
up
like
your
your
brain.
cicada rhythm or something? It's
Yes.
called something else, but yeah, it totally messes
Yes.
with that.
And so he's very codependent, but in these circumstances, even more so, like, so I don't know. I don't like that he's if we weren't dealing with any confessions here, it would be a different story, but I cannot acknowledge the confessions without, and this is why I wish we were really able to see those initial interviews, because what we're being relayed is those initial interviews. Richard was adamant, I didn't do this. I'm not going to be your scapegoat. I am not going to admit to something I did not do. And then we see these confessions where he's eating his own feces, slamming his head against the wall, and he's relaying to his wife and mom that he's done this stuff.
But if you look at some of those confessions, they kind of start out, and I know Shay put a couple links for you in the back, so I don't know if any of them have what I'm about to say, but like they kind of start out with,
Yeah,
did
the
I do
Twitter link.
this? I did this. Like, I mean, just the way that the confessions start out is very like apprehensive, and then they get more like firm, like, no, I did it. I did it, mom. It was me. I did it. And
Yes, and
I
that's
do
what
think
I
a
didn't
lot of
like.
that stems from him being messed with. Absolutely.
Yeah, this is like a really long form, and I think it's like something great to reference. But I did put a link to. So this is from All Eyes on Delphi. That they have a website named just that, and they're on Twitter. And so she does a synopsis in the Twitter thread to point out like the timeline and stuff according to Dr. Walla's testimony.
Yeah.
So here's the problem. We have Dr.
Let's talk
Walla.
about Dr. Walla.
Okay. And Dr. Walla was Richard Allen's psychiatrist at the prison, which again, yes, prison, not jail.
Therapist.
Sorry, therapist.
Well,
She was
I confused it in the beginning too because there's like
the
I'm like, well,
Halidol
why did they need the
administration.
other guy for Halidol? Well, he's the
Right.
psychiatrist, so yeah.
Huh. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So she saw Richard Allen every day by Richard's own admission, because there was the recorded call too, where he was explaining to Kathy, I see her every day. We then find out she was fired. Why was she fired? She was following the Delphi case prior to Richard's arrest. Okay, there's nothing you could really do about that. I will give her that, right? You can't.
Wait, well, I want to be clear too, because like this had to be cleared up. She was fired from working at the penitentiary. The company
not
that
her
she
company.
works for was a contractor that they brought her in, and she's originally from Illinois, and she still works for that contracting company, but she's not allowed to work at that prison.
Correct. Thank you.
Wow,
And
they should
thank you, TV.
they should remove her therapist license or whatever
Yeah.
it is she possesses.
Yep. So, and DB says she was a psychologist, but yes, doing psychotherapy
DB.
and making recommendations for the psychiatrist. And thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
So she was following the murders of Abby and Libby. She's into true crime herself, which again, I cannot hold her to that. She didn't have a magic ball. She didn't know what the future was going to hold. But one immediately, and I'm not educated with, hey, are there conflict of interests in situations like this? Would it have been proper protocol for her to speak up and report it? Is that something that's happened before where, hey, I should not take him on as a patient? I don't know. I'm not educated to know what you would do in that situation. But what we do know is that she was giving Richard Allen, and this is just what we know officially. I always believe there's more to the story that we don't know. She was giving and relaying Richard Allen information about what the public was saying. And then
he has supporters.
Yeah, that officially that's what she admitted to, Shay. I don't believe that's all that was
I think it was a lot more. I'm with you, Melissa. Like, she admitted to telling him that he had supporters out there.
Right.
If that's the part she's admitting to, I think there was definitely more that she relayed to him.
Well, and I think that what's the most egregious about this is she's saying that she did tell, like, her, I don't know, supervisor that she's into true crime and knows about the case. But the biggest problem was that she used her power within the system of the prison to look stuff up on Richard in regards to this case. So that's where, like, one of the largest violations came in that they can record.
Into his medical database and stuff.
Yeah, she was using her position to look stuff up that's privileged information, and then she was communicating with YouTubers.
Oh yeah, you want to talk about that?
Yes.
I don't know how far you want to get into it. I didn't want to mention it if you didn't.
All the way into it.
But tell me how. Sorry, go ahead. I'm so frustrated with this part.
No. I want you to rant because I will too. But Little Red, she wasn't the one prescribing. It was the psychiatrist that was doing that. And that guy was on stand. And I'm sorry, he was a shit show too.
He was.
So
he absolutely was.
But yes, sorry. I just to be clear.
Tell us how what?
I want somebody tell me how Gray Hughes is in a fucking chat in March telling people that we're gonna find out that Richard Allen was scared that day. You know, like how did he word it, Shay?
I got it. Hold on.
I want his exact quote. But tell me how Gray Hughes knew this back in March before. Isn't that before the state alleged it happened even? I'm just like, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
Okay, so here's the way it goes. So it says Gray. Oh, do you want me to just send you the pictures? Or do you? Okay, that might be easier because it's like a thread, but I'm not gonna make you pull up Twitter.
Yeah, and she joined several Facebook creators groups. Bunch of shout outs on the stand for YouTubers getting involved, but she joined several of their groups after she realized that Richard Allen was her patient, and then she joined Defense Diaries the day of the safekeeping order.
How is that possible?
This is where I think the white van comes into play.
I know.
I think she
because
that
guess what
information.
Gray covered before this?
No way.
He covered the van. Yes, he covered the van. He covered every aspect of this trial. I've watched so much of that stuff. But now hearing this in court, I'm like, I got some questions for you, Gray. I got some serious questions.
Oh, I have a question too. I don't know if you saw my comment back to you, Deets, but I think that this chat, from what I could see, because it was a better picture of the thread, it was in Greedos.
Yes, I did see that. At first, I wondered if it was in Defense Diaries based on the membership badge, but you did tell me, it was Greeno's chat. Because I was like, where did he say it? I want to go find it.
So this says, wouldn't it be sorry. Wouldn't it be so bad if there were some kind of correlation between Hughes coming into info only Walla should have had and publicly sharing it, and Walla's Facebook comment stating she liked to listen to Gray Hughes? Like, if they were both posted the same exact day, that would look bad. And then they post Monica Walla, which is the psychologist for Richard Allen.
But
Gray,
pause.
go ahead.
Who enters freaking Facebook groups as a therapist
I
on a
don't
very
know.
high profile case under their
Right?
own damn name? Who does that?
Exactly. Like, I don't know that, and that's what makes me question everything, because it makes me feel like there's something deeper going on here.
I mean, I
makes me
wouldn't have believed it
wonder-
if she wouldn't have admitted to it, but she
Yeah.
admitted to it on stand. I would have thought someone was trolling as her.
Right.
Because you have to be a special kind of stupid to join those groups under your real name, but she
Yep.
did.
She
Well,
sure
then
did.
that's what made me question, are you really into true crime? Because we would have known better not to do that. Not to say
Yeah.
ethically it should have been done, but god damn.
And the way that she admitted to, I only told Richard that about what was going on publicly, that he had support. That's kind of like when you get caught cheating, right? But
Yeah.
they don't know you fucked. So I just kissed him, like, you're only admitting to the bare minimum of what you have to admit.
Yes.
I believe there is so much more to this story.
Oh my god, you meant cheating like as in a relationship, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not
I
on a
was
test.
thinking,
I
like,
thought you were
like on a
thinking a test at
test.
first, and then you're
no.
like, oh, well, no, you wouldn't fuck over cheating on a test. So I knew what it was then.
You went there. Okay.
Sorry. Well, yeah, that's the best way I could describe it. Like, oh, well, babe, no, it was only that one time and it was just only a kiss. Meanwhile, no, you've been
They were
banging
hooking up for
the crap out of her
years.
for months. Yeah, like, get the hell out of here. So we have this screenshot that shows Walla saying Gray Hughes, Delphi After Dark for the drama, True Crime Investigates, Criminality, Defense Diaries, Sleuth Intuition. His calm tone is unnerving. So,
Hey, Sleuth, where's the plea agreement? I'm still waiting on that. Sorry. That was just me being snarky.
So this says, interesting considering Nick McLeland never even got approval to obtain Rick's medical records until April 2nd. So even he shouldn't have had any knowledge about anything Walla wrote down. And this is the subpoena.
So he didn't know about it till August 2nd, but then look at this timeline. Back in March.
You can read it, go ahead.
No, yeah, I'm just like, just pay attention to the dates. That's what's crazy.
So March 15th, Gray Hughes alleges Richard Allen saw Weber arrive home on February 13th. Details that Walla has claimed are part of Rick's confession. On the 15th, Walla publicly posts in the Delphi Facebook group about liking Gray Hughes. Then on April 2nd, McLeland granted access to Rick's IDOC medical and mental health records. So you see Gray make a comment here. Well, when Brad Weber drove home that day, he was seen by Richard Allen. You will find that out someday. Excuse me?
So how'd he know that? How are we all gonna find it out someday?
That's fucked up. That is so fucked. And when you find out more about the Brad Weber and Mullins conversation in time, it pisses you off.
You want to explain that?
And we also know, because I have listened to Gray on this, and I tried to remain like impartial to his thoughts for a very long time, but we know for years he's been talking about his connections to people surrounding the case, to family members, to
he had Kelsey
witnesses,
Gervin interview.
yeah, to so many people. Well, not even just Kelsey, but like he's talked about, helping out local police, all this stuff. So why wouldn't it be outside of the realm of possibility that he was also talking to Richard Allen's therapist? How did he know this?
I don't think, and this is just my opinion, I'm not making an accusation here, but I think it is a mutual unspoken knowledge that we're not going to admit that information was leaked, because we are aware how bad this looks and we don't want to be held responsible. So I don't think there's ever going to be admission on either Walla's side or the recipient side. at
This
all.
makes
But we're supposed to believe she was this involved and she was only relaying to Richard, because that would be a factor in the confessions. That's, I'm kind of circling back around why I would accept a confessions, because I have an issue with them. But if he was being administered against his will antipsychotics,
he
he
was. It
was
was involuntary at first.
right.
Yep.
It was, he's in this situation, the lights are never off, suicide watch all this time, and if you are being fed, everyone already thinks you're guilty. Everyone then cannot, because that would be a massive piece of the puzzle to me, and why I could get my head around confessions that may be false.
He was quote unquote confessing, according to them, before he even had a lawyer.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, it's just, it's really it's a messed up situation. I think she tried to distance herself, but I mean, I have never, like, I don't even think I've said this to any of y'all, but now this makes me wonder as we're talking through this, could this maybe be the reason why Gray didn't go to the trial?
Mm.
I don't know, I kinda wonder, but also what that person just commented, I didn't catch their name, why'd she destroy her handwritten notes?
Yes. She said,
Why'd she
"Oh, that's
destroy them?
standard. Oh, it's standard to destroy original copies, especially and when you know that they have not yet got, because it's one thing with prison, right? If they're convicted. This man has not yet gone to trial.
Mm-mm.
Okay? It's
He's not, they're
standard.
not supposed to get rid of them whenever they're going to trial. That's what they said.
Right. These are the original copies, Miss Ma'am.
And
I don't know, this is
oh,
fishy.
yeah, it is very fishy. All of it is.
So, what do you guys think about the confessions? Where do you stand on it?
I think that there's that one confession that multiple creators have reported to, and even I think one of the mainstream media places reported that like after the phone call where he's talking to Kathy and tries to convince her he did it, like there's a hang up, there's a click, and then you hear him say, okay. Like I don't know. It just
He's talking to somebody.
and he
And,
says,
and she said
okay.
she was with him during like one of those, like she was there.
And I just feel like he was so based on what they said that they saw in his original interrogations, which I'm glad they played the original interrogations because it does
Yeah.
give you a baseline for what Richard Allen was like before all of this. And he held up to the Reed, technique. He held up to that. He did not give in. He didn't back down. None of that.
Well,
But I
and I think
really
that was
think
a, oh, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, I really think that they capitalized law enforcement and all divisions capitalized really quickly on Richard Allen and what he's about. And he's about his family. And I think that they continue to use that against him. That's just my opinion.
Hmm. I was just gonna say that I think that it's interesting to me because I feel like the confessions were coerced. I don't think that they had him alone on the bullet. I think that as we talk through the ballistics, the way it was done with the testing and how it was presented was wrong, but it never even rolled out like Brad Weber's gun. That was interesting to me. I think that's kind of a hot topic, and I'm glad they could utilize that. But when it came to the confessions specifically, and then the first round of interviews, when the investigators were on the stand and they kept commenting on his demeanor, I feel like they did a hell of a job opening the door for the defense to say, well, let's see those, because it didn't sound like they were going to present those in trial. And
Hmm.
I think what I've heard from different people reporting on the case to some degree has been that what you hear the investigators interpret and say on the stand, once you hear it like with your own ears, it's actually something different. And I find that to be very troublesome because they're like what you're saying that oh, you'll hear on this video that Richard Allen is gonna say I'm gonna tell, or I'll tell them what they want to hear, but like it's it's something different. It's whatever they want me to say. It's just things like
Yeah, the
that
way
I
they
just thought were super
presented it, you're
sus.
right. They presented it as like he made this confession, like I'll give him what the, I'll tell him the truth. When you finally hear it, it's more like, let me know if you can't take this any longer, and I'll tell them what they want to
Right.
hear.
And
And
he's
Right.
very
that's vastly
codependent.
different. Yeah, vastly
Yes.
different. I just feel like, and then another part with the confessions that get to me is they're wedged between so much crazy ramblings from him. Like, these confessions are wedged between, like, can I have some Taco Bell now? And I murdered my grandchildren who he didn't have
Right.
at the time. And
Right.
then the essay on family members that didn't happen. Like, they're just wedged in with so much other, incohesive rambling or incoherent ramblings of this guy. How can anybody take that seriously?
Yeah.
I swear I struggle,
It's
but I know there
it's
are. I'm not trying
heartbreaking.
to discredit those that do take it serious because if the community on social media is representative of the jury, there are going to be jury people that take those confessions
Yes. It's like
seriously.
12 of us right in here trying to all agree on one thing. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's just a jury of 12 peers, guys. But I, and I know I'm not, there are certain situations where I will look at things individually on its own without outside factors. There are other situations where I have to look collectively. This is one of those situations where I have to look collectively, not individually, when it comes to the confessions. The
Right.
confessions are big, they're big for me,
It's a
but
lot.
I have to collectively take all the evidence or lack thereof into play when weighing those confessions. And there is nothing outside of those confessions that makes me think, yeah, he's the guy. Really,
Well,
there isn't.
even in the state of Indiana, I don't know what the number is or any of that, but, like, to have a confession be, like, accepted, it has to be backed up with evidence. So is there any evidence to back up these confessions? And then you also have the other group of people screaming like, "No one would ever commit or admit to something they didn't do," when we just flat out know that's not true.
Oh,
We've seen
yes,
it
they
time
will.
and time again in cases
There's an
that people
entire Netflix
do.
series based on false
Yes.
confessions.
There are, I mean, that's why we have innocent projects in almost
Yep.
every state and the big one. So like people do admit to things that they didn't do, and maybe we don't understand their reasonings where we sit, but if we were put in those exact same positions, would we possibly understand them a little better? I think it's probable.
Well, I mean, and I think that they brought in a good point that, if by United Nations standards, if somebody has a mental illness, keeping them in any kind of solitary confinement and the conditions he was in would be considered torture. And I know this sounds grotesque because, everybody, I think that even for people who believe that Richard Allen is innocent, it never discounted them wanting justice for Libby and Abby. There's not true justice unless you have the right person. And I think you have two things happening here at hand. You have the way Richard Allen has been treated, the way, and then this other part where, like, do you view him as the possible killer? Because whether he is or not, to some people, the way he was treated has never been done before. Even the warden's telling you that he was fired from his job, in my opinion, for being a fucking sleazeball.
Yeah.
He lied, he lied, he lied. This IDOC system is so bad, and they're not allowed to really talk about it. And see, that's what's
There's
so
so much they've
it's
been cut off from talking about.
yeah, like that's the thing that I always say is like when people are like, but look how much that they're showing in trial. I'm like, but the problem is what they're not showing you. And
Mhm.
that's where it hits hard with me. I get that there's going to be boundaries within evidence and what is admissible, but like this is a huge issue, and I truly believe they're going to have an appellate issue if he is convicted just on the third party stuff alone, when
Right.
the stuff they were wanting to present was actually one of their theories of investigation.
I just
Well, and I'll also say, okay, on day 16, we had,
Sorry.
oh, for what? Please don't
I get
apologize.
like fired up. I'm just like I
We
really feel
all are.
passionate about
same.
this.
Yeah. Well, and
Well,
on
this
day
could be any
16,
one of us. This could be any one of our fathers. This could be any one of
mhm,
our brothers. It could be any one of our husbands. That's why I said if he is found guilty without any factual evidence being presented, it goes back to the fact that you can't be a good Samaritan in this country.
Amen.
And that's outrageous. That's outrageous.
And so for the poll, guys, I'm only including a yes or no answer. I pulled the chat to see if they believe that the state has proved beyond a reasonable doubt Richard is guilty, yes or no, because there really is only those two options. I'm not going to do an unsure, because if you were a jury member and you followed, what would you choose, guilty or not guilty? Like, so I only chose two. But circling back around, day 16, we had Kathy Allen and Richard Allen's daughter. And the reason that they were called to the stand, and I admire the defense for keeping it very limited, because Cross can't really go outside that scope of questioning.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they brought both Kathy and his daughter up is because among those confessions, Richard also claimed to have, molested his sister.
Yeah, it was sister and daughter.
I
that took
apologize.
the
His
stand,
sister
yes.
and daughter, not Kathy. His sister and daughter, is because he claimed to have molested his sister when she was younger. And so she was called to the stand and just asked, did your brother ever molest you? No. And so what they were doing is showing that it was incoherent rambling, not anything legitimate. Okay. And so that was powerful. I think it was powerful. But what the state turned around and did is they tried to ask his sister, when you guys were young, did you have a childhood friend named Chris? And she answered yes before the objection got sustained. And the reason that they were doing that is to show, the state was trying to show, well, which pieces are irrelevant rambling, incoherent rambling? Because he did have a friend named Chris. And at that same time that he's making these claims, he's also talking about actual things that happened in childhood. I think that was a good point. And I think that, she had to answer quickly. Like, I wish she didn't, because they got the answer they were looking for.
But I feel like the everyday person, myself included, we look at psychosis in a black and white, through a lens of black and white, and it's
Yeah.
not like that.
No, it's not.
And I think that's what becomes so hard when it, transfers to a court setting, to a trial setting, because, they're putting out questions and eliciting responses that fit into the black or white box, when we know that psychosis can be a very gray area.
Yeah.
And I think
No,
that
you're
that's
absolutely right. But
harmful.
we have to rely on the jury to understand that too. And with mental health, particularly, there, it's only getting to the time now where people are becoming more educated on it.
Mm-hmm.
Shay,
Absolutely.
What?
I feel like you're like, okay, let me mute myself so I don't, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear all the things.
Oh man,
I have something I could bring up.
yeah, go ahead. I mean, I think I'm just like, I think that the best witness to be able to speak to Richard Allen's mental state, and I wish I could have seen the state put this on as well, is having somebody review him, like what was her name, Dietz, that reviewed all of the everything, like from the confessions to like everything as a whole. And I feel like the state didn't bring somebody in to do that. They brought everything in piecemeal.
Oh,
You know
oh,
what I'm talking about?
yeah, I know who you're talking about. Why
What's
can't
her
you guys will
name?
think of her name? It was the one of the defense's biggest, witnesses for this, that kind of walked through all of this.
Yeah, and I thought that,
I
like,
can't go
had the
look at my
state have
notes because I'm
done
on my
done
phone.
something like that, it would have maybe given me, something to compare to. But having the people on the stand that um all have already lost their jobs and have been implicated in some shady crap, like that credibility, if I'm a juror and I'm hearing that lessens for me. Also, I think that the whole thing with Indiana having the skilled witness is weird to me.
Yes,
I
because
don't
that
think that's
skilled
right.
witness only comes and goes when it's beneficial to them, it seems like. Like, yes,
Right.
Elridge, thank you. It was Elridge that did the cohesive testimony, but like the skilled witness thing, So
Well,
they
did
can
the
testify.
technology.
Yeah, yes, you are right. Who did
Hold on.
the medical stuff then? Yeah,
I just
I can
lost
go
it.
pull
Go ahead
up
and
my
get it.
laptop if you need me to, but
I'm getting it.
to testify that they're a skilled witness, these guards are from the Department of Corrections, and so they can testify to his mental health. But then when asked a mental question by the defense, oh, well, that's outside the scope, or oh, they're not qualified to do that, but they were qualified to do it on direct. How does that work? Like, what?
That's a
How
good
does their
question, Beats. Yeah.
how does their qualified witnessing status work differently on the defense side than it does on the prosecution side? That didn't make
Uh,
any sense to me.
It's Dr. Polly Westcott.
Westcott.
She's the one who did the full briefing of Richard Allen for his mental health history and decline while in prison. And she looked at everything, I feel like, as a whole, where the defense brought it in pieces. And that's problematic to me because those pieces are coming in very subjective from those witnesses, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought having somebody objective in a higher position to be able to look at it as a whole was more telling to me. And I would have liked to heard that from the state personally as well.
If
Hi,
you go,
Unity.
I want to see if they show where he parked that day because that was another thing the state got wrong is they totally twisted up where he said that he parked.
Mm.
And
And
I think that's
we don't think the
important.
jury understood that the CPS building was abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so I also want to talk to you guys a bit about the hair, and the body placement of the girls, and it,
Mhm.
the staged debate, and lack of drag marks. But I want, um, what was my first thing, man? See, so I can't work backwards.
I'm sorry, I'm focused. So pause right there.
Okay, hold on.
Oh,
Wait, I'll
go
jump
back
back.
like,
It's okay.
yeah. So
Tell
right
me
there.
when.
Okay, so there's a spot that's off screen, just like under this curved camera, if I'm not correct, where the state is like, if you go back just a smidge more, you'll see it. It's what they were like, that spot right there, pause. Right down there in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. I think that's where they were like on our side of the road is where they were trying to allege he parked. But if you listen to his testimony, I think what the law enforcement did with that, I think he was saying like he parked across from the old farm, meaning like an actual farm, and I think they transferred that into the old farm building and now put him in a completely, but that's not even it. It's like over on the other side down the road across from that farm. People said there used to be a parking spot there, and Kathy Allen testified as to, well, she didn't testify, sorry. She told a YouTuber that that's where they used to always go and park and took that YouTuber to that spot. So I think it was just like it kind of goes back to the timeline. Like we heard that he was there from 1:30 to 3:30, but then when you listen that, and we're just supposed to take that law enforcement officer's word for it because that's what he wrote down. But then when you hear his interrogation, he walks through it and says, "I left my mom's at, this time, what was it? 11 or 11:30.
Yes,
He drove
yeah.
straight home, grabbed a jacket, stopped and grabbed a couple beers, and then went there. So it would have put him there, closer to the 12:30ish mark than it would have 1:30. So I just think they were able to conflict a lot of testimony and twist it into something else. I don't know if that
Yeah.
was intentional to fit their timeline or if they just didn't comprehend what he was saying.
Thanks, Jones. And Joneson says, Shay, I'm loving your passion. Don't stop.
Night, Jay.
Bye.
And here's Joneson link. I always forget what my Nightbot link is for her because it has like the capitals and the apostrophes, but I figured
Just
it out.
Jones.
So yeah, it's just Jones. I remembered what I wanted to ask quickly. Does anybody know Abby was wearing 2 bras? And I was speaking to Shay about this yesterday. Abby was wearing 2 bras when she was found, and they explained this during the autopsy. Were both bras Abby's, or was one Libby's? Does anybody know?
they didn't like, they never really explained that in court. That's the way I understood it, Shay, correct me if I'm wrong, because, there was, like, testimony that one might not have been an actual bra, more of like a tank
Yes.
top bra, and so
Well,
both girls have worn them at one point, but this is no disrespect to the victims, but their size was quite different, so I
yes.
would think they would know if one was the other girl's bra, so
Well, and it
I
it
don't know.
stood out to me, and thank you so much, Neat Noodle. It stood out to me, and I because when the argument is uh was Abby undressed at some point. Well, we know that at one point she definitely was undressed, and we know that there were dirt, blood, residue on her back, which indicates that she was laying there at least for a portion of the time undressed. But
Mhm.
with the bras, that would tell me if both bras were her, she at least still had her bras on, because not everybody would know how to double up that bra back. Like if you're the type, like, which is, I
Yeah.
feel like it's common at that age when you're just starting to wear one, you could wear two, whatever. I would not think those would come off and go back on.
Yeah, without trying to I do think it's plausible for her to be wearing 2 bras without trying to
Yeah.
be, like, too graphic. I know a lot of moms, like, when my daughter first started to need to wear a bra,
Yes.
I agreed to the lightly lined bra
Yes.
because if you're a woman in here, I don't need to spell it out why that's important at that age, where some moms are like, "No, you're not gonna have a lightly lined bra,"
Hmm.
because they view it as, like, a push-up bra or adding to it or something, but I thought it was important to allow that for reasons that are obvious to women. And so if some moms were like, "No, you're not wearing a lightly lined one," I have known girls of that age, like you said, to wear 2 to kind of
Right.
give that extra lining to keep, things at bay. Because I know some people were arguing like, "Well, she wasn't big enough to need to wear 2 bras." Well, yes,
It
some
doesn't
girls who are
matter.
bigger chested do wear 2 bras for that reason, but there's also reasons for
There's
girls that are just
reasons. Yeah.
becoming women that might wear 2
Yes.
bras. Absolutely.
And Sweet Melissa says one was a cami. I am not positive both are hers. Thank you. Because
That's what
if
I
they're
heard
not,
was a cami.
where's Libby's?
Yeah, that's
Um,
a great question.
but getting into the to the bodies a bit more, as far as the placement, I have a serious I have a serious issue with this also regarding the time frame. We're told this was all done within 1 hour,
Yeah.
yet it does not appear that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think before I speak. Um, that
Sorry.
they talked about, Libby was dragged, okay, yet there isn't anything that would indicate that. And we're
Yeah.
dealing with terrain that would be very easy, in my opinion, to be
Did
noticeable as
you
far as a drag mark.
did you hear their excuse as to why there is no disturbance?
They said there was a little, I remember. That was what I remember them saying, like, oh, well, there were some drag marks, but
Very minimal, but
yeah,
what
very,
they also said was that I know fired Shay up, it fired me up, was that the leaves stuck to her and therefore created like this floating friction between
what?
her and the leaves on the ground. Yes, and so the leaves that were stuck to her easily glided over the other leaves that were on the ground, and that's why you don't see a major disturbance in the leaves.
How did I miss that?
Oh,
What?
I was hot. I was
Uh-huh.
so frustrated.
Are
Like,
you
w like,
what?
you gotta think this was, like the ground was covered in leaves, like, you don't like, even these pictures here that MJ's putting up, there's drone footage from that day. It's nothing about the crime scene photos that we need to see to
No, no.
know that these woods were covered in leaves, and to say that because some of the leaves stuck to her, it helped her glide over the leaves easier, how does that even make sense?
Where's
Like,
all yeah, I don't
you're talking about, like and this is testimony, like, you're talking about 200 pounds being dragged through leaves, like,
Right.
that you're not creating, like, this magical hoverboard of leaves that cause it to glide over the leaves that are currently on the ground. But that was his testimony as to how it could be possible that she was moved into that position without there being a major disturbance.
And we watched a part of an old, I don't know what to refer to it as, a documentary that's unlisted now, but when they were at the area where the crimes occurred, it's
Oh,
very
the Lost
open.
Delphi one? Yeah.
Yes, it's very open. I don't know what the problem is, Akums, nor can I really kind of keep up with chat. Just everyone keep it classy. That's it.
What's
Um,
going on?
You
I don't
guys
know.
have like a personal block button, so if someone's bugging you, just personally block them and we can all keep chatting.
Yeah, simple as
That'd
that.
be
You
great.
guys are all adults. Act like it. I don't care.
All opinions are welcome. Just be respectful.
Yeah. So
You lost your train of thought, didn't
yeah, I
you?
did.
I hate
I'm
it when
sorry.
that
Uh,
happens.
so we're
Oh,
talking about the
it was,
leave the crime scene.
yeah, in that, so when they went to that area, and again, it's something that we can't really understand through it, like you could see the area, I could see where they're recording right now, like, but being there, it really is different. And so
Yeah.
what she had said was, this is like a stage. She's like, this is so open, and even though with me I associate a wooded area with more privacy, I get spooked, honestly, like with that idea. But she's like, no, this is opened area, anybody can really see, like they may not be next to you, but even far away you could get a straight eye shot, because I
Well,
guess the
look right
trees were
there.
spread
I
out.
mean, like,
Yeah.
even in that forested section over by the railroad tracks, you can see through those trees over there.
Yes.
They're sparse. It's a sparse forest, I guess, how you would put it. It's not
Well,
dense.
and
Yes.
even the witnesses that were there when they're saying that the murders occurred, they didn't hear anything. They were sitting right there on like the platform of the
Hmm.
Monon High Bridge. You had what we understand, you had Kelsey German and her and Liberty's dad, looking for them. Then you had police, firefighters looking through the night. Like nobody found them. Like it's weird to me. I think
It
that they
is.
were moved there in the middle of the night. That's always been my theory.
You do.
Yeah, I thought they were brought back there. They were taken somewhere and then they were brought back. I
That
think they
has
waited
not
for everywhere
always
to clear.
that has not always been my theory. I've gone into this very unbiased, as we joke about over on teas, like sitting on a fence here,
Yeah.
trying to see both sides of it. But after the trial has went further and further along, I do believe that the where they were found was not where they were killed.
Well, they essentially admitted to that.
Hmm.
They essentially admitted to that. They said, at least. Now, I will rebuttal that, because we know that there was blood found on the tree that indicate, that it could have been, it appears that Libby was, see, this is where it contradicts. Some of the wounds indicate that Libby was sitting at the time, and then other wounds indicate that she was moving and could have grabbed it onto the tree. And I'm like,
Hmm.
wait, what? Like, how can both be true? I struggle with that. But either way, they admitted that she was placed there, that wasn't, but you're telling me you couldn't determine where the initial, like, the wounds we're talking about here, and we're talking about arteries, that, like, it should be apparent, in my opinion.
There would
And
be
I'm
a lot of
struggling.
evidence there.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
struggling that it's not, we haven't been
Well,
given answers.
and then I don't feel like they did an adequate job, and maybe the jury feels differently, but I don't feel like they did an adequate job of showing or explaining how the blood flowed upside down on
Yes.
her face. You
That's
know
what
what
I
I
was
mean?
thinking too. The blood
Yes.
flow was big. Like, I mean,
They
and I
did
know
a
that's hard to hear. Like that
It
they
is.
said looks sounds like Libby was crying, and these weren't like wounds that were immediate, death. Like this is,
Mm-mm.
maybe unconscious or and I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes.
It's hard to hear this, but it does sound like they suffered for quite some time,
Yeah.
and I hate
Yeah.
that.
But I
And no
cannot,
defensive wounds. Yeah.
it's the blood dripping upward that I have major questions about. What do
Yep.
you, so again, you told me, right, and I'm acting like a juror. You told me there was a portion she was sitting. there was a portion she was standing, but now you're telling me the blood is flowing up her face as if she was in some type of a position upside down. Okay.
Yeah.
What, give me something that makes sense. You have
Explain
not
it to
given
me.
that to me. Yeah, have me understand this, and I don't understand this. Where are the articles of clothing that are missing? Why was Abby essentially pristine? I have so many questions about this.
Yeah,
um
why was Libby not pristine at all and
yes,
Abby was? And
yes.
I just felt like this is where, because I do know what's in the Frank's motion, that explains things a lot better than what I really went into this hoping that the state would show me another side of that Frank's motion, explain this to me, and give me reason to believe that Richard Allen's the guy. And they would, point it out like this, and this. This is why she, this is happening, or this is how he caused them to go and do this or that. But they want us to believe that this man by himself was able to hold these two teenage girls without any restraints, keep them there, and inflict this slow, brutal, painful death without making any sound that the people on the bridge would hear.
Well, and no defensive wounds. Can
And
we talk
no,
about
yeah, and
that
they didn't
too?
fight back. They didn't run. There was no fight or flight, like nothing. They did not do a job to at all explaining that to me. That's where I'm
I'm
really stuck.
struggling with the lack of defensive wounds, because if it was one victim we were referring to, okay, I can rationalize. I've seen that before. I could rationalize. When we're talking about two victims, one killer, lack of defensive wounds is a big issue for me.
Because they went all in trial that it's only Rick. Like they took out everything else. Scarlet? What's
Hi,
up,
King
girl?
Scarlet.
And like, I don't know.
That it doesn't make sense, and I wish that. Oh my god! But then, what else is there? Because I know I've heard other creators say Richard is guilty in their opinion
Mhm.
because there was no one else there, that everyone else was accounted for, and Richard was not seen by the other people who were there at the critical time that he should have been there. What do
And to
you guys
me,
think?
that kind of points to the state's timeline being off. Maybe the people that are there as witnesses testifying to all this and who they saw, and it doesn't match up to Richard Allen. It matches more to this, bridge guy person than anything else, is because Richard Allen was there at a different time. That's kind of where my
Mhm.
brain goes.
I'm of the one that I think that whenever he was asked like when he was there it was like given like an approximation time, and it's being recorded as it's between this, and that's when I was there, and I didn't take it like that. Like I was more
Mm-mm.
like, oh, I think I was out shopping between like two or four, like between two or four.
Right.
Like I took it as more like a casual. And um I know Andrew Burkhart did touch on this. I can't remember exactly what like Lauren and a few others had said, but when you get to like see his interview that he has first with the police, like he's very you better understand his dialect and how he communicates. And obviously, since it's not being videotaped, one will never get to see that, like an aspect of what happened in trial. And if it's being recorded for audio, like they're not planning on releasing that. So I think,
Mhm.
and I don't know what it's going to look like for them to even release any of this kind of evidence, because it seems like, Judge Gold has pretty much put the kibosh on that right now. And I think that would be telling too, to kind of get a little bit of his temperament, because written in black and white, it could be taken in one perspective versus how you're hearing somebody talk and it be more casual. Like I know if I'm talking to Deet, she's going to be very factual, like in times and this, but maybe somebody else I'm speaking with is going to be a little bit more open in that time. It's more of a time frame and not like a time
Not a
pinpoint.
definitive time, yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I think that maybe like this could be a big misunderstanding and how people are viewing the evidence that's coming in. And it's
Mhm.
natural. I did it too when it first came out because I was like, oh, they got somebody. But the more
Yeah.
and more that things like we got the big case, download in July, I think July 2023, I was like, man, there's some stuff that's missing here because I've followed Delphi since pretty much the beginning, and there were a lot of discussions and people, locals, that talked about stuff that I didn't see included in this at all, and
Hmm.
witnesses. And I'm like, where are they? And, then the Franks motion came out and it was jaw dropping. And that was some of the stuff I heard. But then getting to hear like some of the defense witnesses that finally were able to come up, those were some of the people I heard that had commentary as well in the groups I was in, that I was wondering, whatever happened to them.
I Yeah, that one that kept quiet and didn't really speak out at all, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I thought that her
Cheyenne.
testi I think so, yeah, that her testimony, it was very interesting, very, very interesting, and we hadn't heard much from her prior. Someone in the chat, I can't remember your name, Carrie, said like you would be scared, if this, overweight older man had a gun at you. I get that. I would be too. I'm not saying like if I was a teenage girl and some man was waving a gun at me and telling me to go down the hill, I'd probably go down the hill. Even though I taught my daughter, don't do that, run. It could
Yeah.
be your life. But I probably would have. I agree with that. My point is then, okay, then you're marched across the creek and basically, like Shay said earlier, to this stage. And I'm not saying they both would run, but one is being like he can't,
One,
they're
right?
not restrained. He can't, kill them at the same time. So one is being brutally murdered by this slow, painful tool. We all know that like knife killings are very up close and personal. So why is the
Mhm.
other one not? I mean, even just seeing that, you would scream bloody murder, or
Yes,
at least move or run or something. I don't know, and it feels like it's not plausible.
it's not
That part
adding
isn't
up,
at all.
but we do know that during the medical examiner's testimony, Abby had these two light, faint pink markings going across the left
Her neck.
side underneath her chin. And they
Mhm.
said the medical examiner could not say that it was tape or a rag. They couldn't exclude it was tape, but there was no tape residue. But
Yeah.
it can indicate some type of covering over her mouth. I have my own
Okay.
theory with that. But it, like you said, if we're talking about one victim, and I think Abby was the first victim, there was
Well,
clearly
we'll never know because that's another ball they dropped. They didn't swab the wounds because you would be able
yes,
to tell, you know,
mixed
which
DNA.
person's,
Yes.
yeah, DNA was mixed with the next one, so you'd be able to tell who the first victim was
How
as opposed to
didn't
the second,
they?
and they didn't swab those wounds.
Deet, how didn't they?
And
I don't know.
they left the branches and sticks out there
They
with
left
blood.
fucking branches. What do you guys think about the branches? Because this was the biggest thing in the beginning. We heard all about this all the way to trial. Is this They were staged. Bless these girls. God, they were staged. And these branches, okay? And we have the sketches, like they sketched out the best way that they could. But one thing that we do know is that these branches were covering both of the girls' wounds. Um,
Mhm.
what do you think? Do you more align with they were used to cover the bodies?
No, there's piles of leaves around these girls right there to cover. If you wanted to cover and hide something, there was a lot of, natural material to be able to cover those girls. And instead, you put random sticks in random positions. It wasn't like a ton of sticks and limbs and, you know, leaves over them. One girl had a freaking, what did they say?
It
seven
was
foot
a
long
tree.
branch
Yeah.
over her?
Yeah.
Like, and they didn't even get into the testimony about one being freshly cut. I don't know what that's all about, but
Oh, what's that? What do you mean?
that was brought up in the Frank's
Yeah, the Franks
motion.
motion.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it had like fresh cut marks on it. The branch had fresh cut marks
Yes.
on it. That never even came out at trial, so I don't. now my curiosity is like, what does this mean? You know? So,
I think
guess
it
we'll
is.
never hear it.
I think it's so unfair how limited the defense is, because Odinism was being looked into day 2
By the FBI.
How the hell are the defense not able to introduce that? Like, am I crazy here? Because that was your guys' own investigation. How aren't they able to use that?
Right? There's so many rabbit holes about this case that I thought would come out in trial, and basically nothing. Like, none of those rabbit holes have came out in the trial, and I don't
And they
know
wanted to
why.
shut him up, and it pisses me off because I think that
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I go back to this, like, say, people could feel whatever way that they want about things, but I believe that Richard Allen is factually innocent. Say the jury decides differently and then he's guilty. What happens if they start researching this case afterwards? Like, and they find out there's more that they didn't know. And like, that's also a big burden to bear. And I could think about that for many cases. And to think that there hasn't been false confessions, people are completely wrong. There's been known studies about it. And people can say like what they want about I don't think that Andrea Burkhart came into this with any kind of like biases. I think she is very informed, but over time, like she's seeing how things play out, but she's an appellate attorney. Like this is like what she does. She's looking at like what you can take on appeal. And, just as much as you want, if you really want true justice, then you want both defense and prosecution to be able to provide the best case. So if it is the right person, to ensure they're not getting out on appeals, but if it's the wrong person, then they're not being wrongfully convicted. So you've got to see it both, like it's got to be
Yeah.
both ways.
Well, and like I told a friend yesterday, like, okay, I understand that some people are hesitant to listen to some of the defense attorneys cover this because they're like, oh, they're defense attorneys, so they instantly side with the defense. Well, then
Yep.
go listen to Lawyer Lee, because she's doing a heck of a job, and she's not a defense attorney. She is an attorney,
Yep.
but she's not a defense attorney. So I don't know. I just feel like that
She's
there's a lot of people who have been following this since day one. They're so emotionally invested. They're so invested in all of the social media noise that happened surrounding this case, which was so much from what I understand, that they already have like these preconceived notions about what it is. And there's absolutely no swaying them. And that makes me fearful for if he is found not guilty, it makes me very fearful for him and his family.
because
Oh,
they're gonna say that the jury got it wrong. But I'm looking at this and I say that this starts with the investigation from day one. And my opinion, based on what we've seen, there seems to be a lot of incomplete um investigation into the evidence that they had at hand, and I think that's very discouraging. If you had CCTV footage, why didn't you check every car? If you thought it was a Ford Focus,
Yeah.
why didn't you go to Richard's house then? Like,
yeah.
I mean, it just seems like there's so many missteps here.
Well,
I agree with that.
and
No,
looking,
Neat Noodle, I think they fucked it up so bad. And how can you say you lost like the first like what so how many what 3 2 what 1 to 4
4 months.
months of like recorded interviews with some key suspects, like, and then there's some that they say, "Oh, it's just technical difficulties in 2017." And then they had another one that they had in like 2022. It was technical difficulties. Well, why don't you fix your shit? Like, it cannot always be the same thing. It's ineptitude or corruption was the question. I don't fucking know.
well, what do you
Sorry.
guys think about finding out? And I know I don't want to keep you forever, but what do you guys think about finding out that the infamous bridge guy video is not all
Is
that it
edited.
may seem? Yeah, it is edited. That
Edited.
there wasn't this creepy guy that they were aware of walking near them, versus when you watch the unedited version,
You can't even
you
see the
can't
guy.
even see him.
You can't hear the guy.
You can't hear him, you can't see him. It's only after it is edited, slowed down, and shown in one single frame. That's why it's such a staggering image of him. is because
So
it's only one frame in movement.
somebody, it might have been DB, but somebody put on their Twitter, maybe you know who this is, Shay, but they did like a really great analogy of this where you take still photos and then they fill in the middle photos with like action shots and then they loop it to make it look like it's a moving, like it's a video, and that's not actually what it is. And like you have a breakdown from that. It might have been that other person who already showed up here, the RMS or something. But what it does is it's missing key pieces of it when you like put it together like that. And that's what they did to this video, and then enhance the heck out of the audio. And we were the public. I
Who's
shouldn't
to
say
say
we,
they
but
didn't
the
distort
public
the
was,
audio?
huh?
Who's to say they didn't distort the audio? You're using AI to some
Right.
degree. Again, I'm on my high hill about this. This was not allowed in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. The judge said no. Yeah, the evidence has to come in its true form, because what the software programs are doing is it's filling in those gaps, and like I
Right.
just think it's complete bullshit.
How do we know it's
Like,
filling in the right gaps? I just feel like this is a slippery slope for sure.
it
And we're
really
not
is.
getting the full context.
And you look at, like, they did the one sketch that they initially put out, which wasn't really the first sketch. And it's based off of who they think is Bridge Guy, but then you have all the other people that they initially interviewed that say this guy's young with his poofy hair or curly hair. Well, where's that fucking guy? Because that guy's not Richard Allen. Sorry.
No,
No,
I
that guy
love
looks
it.
more like Elvis Fields, I think. Like he doesn't look like Richard Allen at all. But he looks like a young kid. He definitely looks like a young kid.
I
But then,
know. Mhm.
I get outraged with the evidence because I think it's unfair to Abby and Libby with how like awful they handled this. Like, even if it was Richard, there's so much that's messed up here. Like, it's outrageous.
And I know that I have been seeing, and so I have to bring it up. I've been seeing, we know about the infamous hair, right? And the hair was confirmed to be Kelsey's, Libby's sister. Now, Libby was wearing her sister's sweatshirt, which was then recovered on Abby. I've been seeing so much speculation about why didn't they look into Kelsey? Why didn't they look into Kelsey? And that's an argument for the state, why they didn't come forward or why they didn't do anything. But what do you guys think about the hair? Because I've been shocked with how much. Now, granted, I didn't look into it, because I was just like, oh, come on, But what do you guys think about the hair and the other hairs that we don't know where they came from? Why
the
wasn't
hair
it
fibers,
tested?
the
Yes,
like what 72 hair fibers that we know
yes.
nothing about that
Well,
they could
yeah.
test, but they're afraid to test. Like, so what are you saving it for? Like, if you're not testing that, what are you waiting for? Because like right now, a man's life. I mean, I know it's not death penalty, but his livelihood hangs in the balance. But we're not going to test
But
it.
but that's the problem. If they think it's him so bad, why don't
Prove
they
it.
test it?
Yeah.
I'm
Um,
sorry, bring in IgG. Why not? Why not?
I, I
This pisses me off.
I think it was shocking for a lot of people to learn that that hair was Kelsey's. Do I think
Yeah.
Kelsey was involved in this? I don't, because there's not any evidence that proves that. Um, but I understand why some people have questions about it. I think that
Yeah,
that's another thing the state could have done a
the
better
state
job
should have.
explaining.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And the guys and down the hill, yes, thank you for saying that, because that's true. The guys and down the hill were two separate sections that were edited into, and so it's making me question everything. But if we're gonna, so if you guys are okay, wait, so you guys think that is not Richard Allen? Bridge Guy is not Richard Allen?
I don't think that's Richard Allen.
So then do you think Bridge Guy is the murderer?
I have no idea. They didn't prove it to me that Birch Guy's even the murderer.
Yeah, I agree with you as well.
Do you
I mean,
guys?
the timing is interesting. It very
Mhm.
well could be, but I don't think that there's hard proof. From what I have understood of the video, that the audio is almost, it's very hard to hear. And
Yeah.
I think one thing that really made me mad is that they have, you know, law enforcement on the stand stating what their interpretation is instead of allowing the evidence to speak for itself. One, that really is just wrong, but I don't like that at all. But the fact that like the voice sounds like it's closer, and they say like Abby like runs by, it seems like that guy's far back. So how like did he get there that fast? Like, I don't know, just some of this isn't adding up to me.
Well, the phone. I can't. I can't let that go. There's
Oh.
some like because it's not just one thing with the phone. It's two things with the phone.
Multiple.
Two things at least with the phone. Um, and I know, and I said this to Shay, and this shouldn't be a factor, but how hard Baldwin and Rose, what's his name? Ross,
Rozzy.
Rossi.
Rose, yeah, Rossi,
Rossi.
Here.
have fought to stay on his case for nothing, like as far as self gain, unless you want to argue just the publicity of it. It means something to me. And we've been hearing
Same.
how Baldwin puts his arm around Richard Allen throughout trial and comforts him, smiles at him. I know, again, that's not evidence. That's just separate me. Why would he fight so hard to defend him unless he believed he was innocent? What do you guys think?
Well, I agree with you. I want to answer a question in the chat. Occam's Razor says, why is Alan's lawyers not getting the hair tested is the bigger question. It goes back to what I said earlier. They have extremely limited funds. So Richard Allen only gets to use in his case what is approved by the judge, and they have been very, very limited on the amount of funds that they can use to
Yes.
get experts in and all that stuff. So they don't have the funding to do that. I
You've
imagine
been
that,
given nothing.
if he is found guilty, that'll be something that they crowdfund for after sentencing and hopefully bring up on appeal. But during this trial, they simply didn't have the funds to be able to do that.
Yeah, and the
But
bigger question
honestly,
is law enforcement.
it's
Like
not
the
their
state.
right. It's not their job to disprove it. It's the state's job to prove it was him by testing those hairs.
So, and I know it's been 2.5 hours, and I know I have to let you guys go. But do you guys think? I just feel heartbroken now because no matter what, someone's walking away devastated, and you know who's lost in it? These girls. Where's going to be their justice? Because I do not think I think it's going to be a hung jury. I cannot imagine there's going to be 12 unanimous people in either direction. I really don't. But who's what? Like, if Richard's not convicted, I do not believe they're going to continue an investigation. So where does that leave the family? Where does that leave the girls'
I would be
justice?
outraged if I was the family. I honestly,
Yes.
hearing this trial, if I was the family sitting in the courtroom day after day, I would be trying to take this up somewhere higher after this. Like,
Is that what they
look
could
at what they have
do
done to my daughter's case, my granddaughter's case, my niece's case, like all that. I'd be like,
after the
we need
leak
other
and
people in
everything?
here.
There
Mhm.
was the leak. There was so much. But then I have to ask you, what do you think they know? Do you think they pin this on Richard? What would be the reason?
So a lot of people assume that, like, when it comes to cases and stuff, that families are kept in the know the whole way, and they're simply not. They just aren't. And so I think that they're learning a lot of information. I mean, there are things that they do know that the rest of the public may not, but it's not to the degree that we think it is. And so I think that they're learning a lot of this stuff at the same time that we are. I truly do.
And
But MJ, I have to hop down. I want to thank you so much for having me up here.
Thank you for
It's been
having.
so
Well,
good.
thank you for having me. Thank you for
Yes.
joining, Deets, and then maybe we could
Anytime.
do a discussion once we get a verdict.
Hopefully tomorrow. I'm
Yeah,
hoping.
I
I was
think they're
shocked that it
deliberating
didn't come
tomorrow.
before the weekend, but
Yeah,
hopefully tomorrow.
I guess
All
we
right,
should.
bye
it's
girls.
been
Deets.
fun, Deets. Love you.
Bye
Love you,
Shay. Love
Deetsy.
love.
Bye.
Make sure to subscribe to Deets, guys, if you aren't already. She's fantabulous. What do you think, Shay? I don't.
Well, I put in the back chat the geofence stuff. So I pulled up the thread that I sent you about what wasn't included in trial.
Mhm.
And I think this geofence stuff is interesting because it was like what the FBI, this is like after this comes from the FBI cast report in 2019. And what we found out at trial is in August of 2021, that is when Doug Carter from the Indiana State Police said that he had the FBI return all of their case materials back to them and kick them off the case. Well, I was looking through the timeline of stuff and I thought it was kind of interesting because by December of 2021, that's when you start the pretrial hearing of Keegan Klein.
Can
And
you
I
explain to people a little, just a little synopsis of Keegan Klein? Because they may be like me. I didn't come in to like that whole stuff till later. So there might be people like me who may not know the scenario with Keegan Klein.
Yeah, so there was a account like the Anthony Shots account, and basically it was an account that Liberty was talking with up until the morning of the girl's death. And it linked back to Keegan Klein, and he used this account to talk to many underage girls on social media. Um, like I guess his dad also had used it as well. He's been charged with quite a bit of CSAM charges, but yeah, they're saying there's no link to him, and I find that interesting because like even in like some of the or his interviews or interrogations, like they, there's a friend of Liberty's that like reached out to, or I don't know who it was. I'm guessing friend, what reached out to him and said, "Oh, did you hear Liberty was killed?" And he was like, "Oh, really?" Like, and then he tried to pretend like he didn't know who she was. I've always thought that account was really interesting. I wondered, like, did the girls go out there to meet somebody and they came across maybe a syndicate of bad people that got a hold of that account that were using it to lure girls. That's just something that I know has kind of stuck in the back of my mind, and the timing of them being kicked off the case or FBI being kicked out. So they did the geofence and they're supposed to look into everything. 2019, 2021 comes and they got Keegan Klein in sight. FBI is off August 2021. December 2021 is when the Keegan pre-trials start. And he said that he would work with them to like help find like the gun. They like looked to the Wabash River. They pulled guns out. These were some of the guns that the ballistics analyst was talking about that she tested, along with other people that lived in the area, like Brad Weber, who also had a Sig Sauer. And I think that that's just kind of an interesting take on it. I there a lot of people believe that that account is connected, and there may be people that he definitely was. Yeah, he was using the account, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's just very, very, very weird. I don't think Keegan looks like him at all, personally, but it's always really bothered me.
Hey, you want to go through?
Sorry.
No, the photo
What do you
comparison
want to?
you showed me.
Yeah. Did you pull up the GPS or the one for the geofence yet?
This one?
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
the geofence one I thought was really interesting because this was part of the Frank's motion, and this was something that was like not allowed in trial. That in here around the crime scene, is showing that there were 3 other people that were not Liberty or um Richard Allen that hit that geofence. Can you scroll down or
Mm-hmm.
keep scrolling? Sorry. So this also brings into the time frame. Keep going. See the 549. Okay, so you know how we're talking about the auxiliary. So this is looking at that time frame. That's why I
Oh,
wanted to show you that. So I think this is why they were so set on this timeline blowing up for them because of the Eldridge's Stacey Eldridge's review of the C files within the Apple phone. And around the time, these were 3 phones that they wanted them to look into more. They wanted to bring this into trial, and they're saying no. So I'm thinking as a juror, if you were to be one to like go through and eliminate all these, even if somebody had a phone or not have a phone, well, who are these other 3 people? Like, I mean, why aren't we looking into this? It says the state of Indiana has provided the defense this map using only the 3 phone numbers, not the multiple other phone numbers that the geofencing data provided. The analysts focus solely on those 3 phones. They show the coordinates of them. They claim the owners of the phones found on this geofencing map were interviewed and then dismissed. Interesting. But see, Richard Allen's not on here. And that's the other thing that has bothered people. And they said, well, and this is where you have people who are on the other side of this to say, well, Richard Allen says he was on his phone, checking the stock. Why isn't his phone like on here? So, but this is really in the crime scene area, like pinpointing it wasn't Richard or Libby. So I found that kind of interesting.
it
Like
is
if I were
very
a juror, I'd want to
interesting.
know. And then it says they said that we believe it's part of the investigation. There's other phones in the area, a device at a cemetery around the time of the murders. We believe connects to 1 or 5, 6 potential people. I mean, it is very interesting. I think there's a lot more here in what could be data that they could have investigated, and they just put the halt on it, and it was like it has to be Richard Allen. We're going to do anything that we can to like make it fit in this.
I
And
wish we were able to see the defense like actually without limit put on their case. You know what I mean? Like show us all the exoner because you have to remember again what Shay said earlier. It's not about what was introduced in trial. It's what
Mhm.
was not introduced in trial. And the jurors have to go solely based on what was presented. They don't know anything else.
Yeah, Rockaways, I agree with you too about the
Yeah.
bullet. And honestly, like what I took from that, and I don't know if y'all caught on to this, but there was somebody who said that they pulled a report, and there was the police called out to Richard's house at this time. And what I took from collective feedback from interviews, that I'm assuming that that bullet that was in that memory box was the bullet that he was threatening to take his life with. And I think that was there to remind him his life is worth living for. And that's the only brand of that one bullet, and the rest were others. It is a very common brand. And they didn't even test it.
Right. Like,
But
and
I
that's what
think
it
that could be
is.
what that bullet is, in my opinion. It could be the one that he was threatening to take his life, and it's a reminder. Because it is, on Stan that he did have, suicidal thoughts. He was very codependent.
There's just so much. And even when you go and see, like, with the Rockaways, right? Even if you're going and you're going to point out something that, hey, this doesn't sit right with me 100%, but then they drop the ball on it. And it's like, well, and then they didn't even do the testing. And it's like, wait, what? And so even with the things that make you go, there's something that isn't
Yeah.
adding up.
Well, I mean, the ballistics was bullshit. Yeah, completely. Like, I can't believe they brought to Stan saying, oh, this is the unspent cartridge, and this is one that's fired through, and see, these markings match. I've heard from people that were in the court that were able to see it that they didn't really look like they matched to begin with, but that wouldn't have been the proper testing. It is apples to oranges. Like, what kind of shit is this? It's a circus. And oh yeah, I sent you these. I always thought these were interesting. This
You
is
want
the
to walk
Brad
us through
Holder
them?
theory.
Yeah, walk us through them.
So, in part of the Frank's motion that that came out, and early on suspects and close family and friends of the Germans, to my understanding, they had a lot of suspicion around Brad Holder at the time that the girls were killed because of some of his Facebook posts. There's a connection because Brad's son, who was much older than Abby, he was dating Abby, like Logan was. Um, so the only thing that I think kind of like so there's the comparison where people were saying, could this be him? He wears these similar hats, the face. Um, his first interviews are part of the ones that have been just, technical difficulties, what the fuck ever they want to call it, that are gone. And you're not allowed to like pursue this. I have a lot of the different Facebook posts. It was included in, some of the Franks. So this is Elvis Fields. He was a person who also in connection, he told his sister like the next day that he killed the girls. He put antlers on one of them.
He
um
admitted, like, let her say that again the very next day, right?
yeah, so the sister calls up, goes to the police. I mean, I'm just giving a very high level one for people. A lot of people probably in chat that I see around in the Delphi chats know this, but he is brought in, he's interviewed, and then he is getting like brought back. So in part of his, I think in part of what he was saying was his alibi was that he was like at a hospital and that like they didn't get phone service. No, they get phone service, but the hospital didn't have record that he was ever there during that time. So that alibi was kind of blown, from my understanding. And then as he's leaving one of the interviews, he's with the with one of the law enforcement officers. I'll pull it up in just a second, but he basically, asked the question about like if they could detect DNA from his spit because he spit on one of the girls. Like who? What the fuck?
And
Like
how,
you have
and
somebody admitting this,
right, and what, weren't they defense witnesses that they wanted to be called?
Yeah, this is one of the ones that he was subpoenaed, and they wanted to talk to him, and they were trying to warrant. Like they don't, they want away from this. And I understand that if you didn't have anything to do with it, but there's they've made confessions allegedly to people close to them who have done. And I know it's not admissible in court, but who have done lie detector tests, have passed them, have been consistent in their stories. It also comes down to like things they were posting around the times, like with the Odinism, the runes, that very similarly match the way the girls are positioned. See, I Elvis like kind of see the look, but it's like the curly hair thing is not what I'm understanding here. Was the description by some of these girls? They said he looked young and beautiful. Elvis isn't very young. I think that's why the other showing the other depiction of one of Holder's sons is was relevant and why that they wanted to do that comparison. So even I have like a there was like a Brad Weber one too. I have, but yeah, the boys, see. I think more the one on the left, yeah. But I don't want to ruin people's lives over here, but
No,
this
no.
stuff has been this was investigated. So the team that investigated so there was three different theories that happened here, and teams and the way they were being investigated. You had one that was going to be the law enforcement team going after their own investigation, then with like ISP, Carroll County, in that group you had FBI that was looking into Ron Logan, which they did. That's where the land the girls were found on. He has since died from the COVID, and he was highly suspect. I mean, there's a lot that's been released, from the FBI on their investigation there. Even his ex-girlfriend or ex coming out talking about that he treated her like a sex slave, that he was very, very abusive, and that's where the girls were found. Then you have the third theory that they were going after, that is it's a comprised team. So it had local law enforcement, it had ISP, and it had FBI, and them as a team were looking into the crime, the murders, because of the way the staging was was of the crime scene, and the Odinism theory kind of comes out. So it wasn't like something that the defense team came out and they just brought it out of thin air. This was a legit investigation. I think this is what pisses me off so much about it not being viable to discuss, because you have very, very critical interviews that were. I agree, Eric. I think something's fucked up. They need to take over because this is nuts. I still think it's nuts they were kicked out.
Can I show Brad's post?
Yeah, yeah, you can show whatever you want to show. I just wanted to like say like there's some deep stuff here, and there's things that like Brad posted early on before like any kind of details of the crime scene were released that looked like the staging of the bodies. This is 2018, but he had other stuff. He had a post of two girls that looked positioned like Abby and Libby that were dead and removed like since then, that were included in the Frank's motion around the time of the killing. So he went in, he, did interviews. I think that, it's very suspect. Now the question about staging could be, I try to look at it from all different sides. Could it be somebody maybe who doesn't practice Odinism, but want it to look like that? Like, I've
Mhm.
tried to have a very open mind, but out of all the people and persons of interest, so you got Ron Logan, the girls were found on his land. You got Brad Weber, his home is near there. Um, then I'm just kind of throwing out some people. And then the Odinist group, which is like Elvis Fields, Patrick Westphal, Brad Holder, and all of them. Um, the one that the girls had a direct connection to would be Brad Holder. I mean, Abby dated his son. So I think it is interesting. And it seemed to me, and I could be wrong, chat, you can tell me, and I'd have to go back and find, but I really think that wasn't Becky Patty maybe leaning more towards them being involved like in discussion groups? Because I was trying to find those old screenshots from Facebook back in the day. I don't know if Rockaways remembers.
And can we just
Yeah.
reiterate that right after this crime happened, they came out and said there's no risk to the community, that there's no reason to be fearful, everything is fine. What? What do you mean two young, beautiful girls are murdered in the most horrific manner in broad daylight around all of these people,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no need for concern? Why do you think it feels like something was wrong from the jump, Shay?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, Fear Jam. Oh, Rockaways. Oh my gosh, wasn't it Lesenby that wasn't Lesenby in his interview that said I was a suspect. Oh, I wish I had that media clip on hand. Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. I just got distracted
You're fine.
because there's a lot of theories around this for so many different reasons, and I understand why people have those theories because there are a lot of unanswered questions. And I still just kind of go back to this botched investigation until they could properly and thoroughly roll things out, have the evidence at hand, have record of it. I don't think people would feel comfortable about any outcome personally. Because there's a lot of people that feel very passionate about their theories for certain reasons. Well, Eric, I thought it was interesting that in the Lost documentary, the one when I watched that one, what is her name? Is it Hannah? Yeah, Hannah. When she was interviewing Liberty's mom in 2019, she said that she was never reached out or interviewed at all. And she was even talking to Libby that morning on Snapchat. Like, why did they think she didn't have a relationship with her mom? Like, why? Like, I mean, and I know that it's not to say Libby's mom has anything to do with this, but I think she was bringing up a good point that, like, about the investigation like you would interview anyone close.
Right.
And there's just a lot of things that don't make sense. I mean, I don't know about the enemies part. I mean, I think that there's some people that have passed there. I could understand. And they said that they did testing of any. Did anybody know? I want to know whenever they did the toxicology and testing, they said that there wasn't any kind of. Some people had questions that, like, one theory honestly was about some drug lab stuff because there is a high, percentage out there. Like, did the girls stumble upon something that they shouldn't have? And I mean, there's been so many theories, Melissa. And I understand that everyone's coming from a standpoint of like, keep an open mind, like you never know, because you're being told all along that this AI generated bullshit video, a bridge guy, isn't really real. Everything's pieced together. It all just seems like you've been gaslit. And they go to court and you're like, this is your best, this is what you got, like you're fighting for these girls and you didn't complete this investigation. Fuck y'all.
And that's what it is. You're fighting for these girls. Like, what happened to these girls is absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific.
Yeah, the
What
timing,
happens now?
Rockaways. I don't know. And Rockaways brought up a good point too, and I didn't even say that the 13th and 14th it's a pagan holiday, so it's a pretty big. I have a lot of the. Have you seen the photos from Brett Holders?
No.
Do you? Here, I'll send them to you real
Yes,
quick.
I want to. I remember I asked you yesterday. I said, "How do you find?" Because I didn't. You guys, I did like I followed the case, but I didn't go deep, and I didn't follow all of the brat, all of that other stuff. The Anthony shots, the Keegan. I didn't follow that. So I even asked Shay yesterday. I'm like, for someone who's trying to understand all of that, where do you go? But it's one of those things, kind of like Idaho. I feel like unless you were there and like watched it play out, it's hard to catch up. It's not one specific place you could find everything.
Yeah. Okay. Here, I'll send these to you. 1 second. It won't take long. Yeah, like there's a lot of things that were posted. He's now privated his Facebook, so like a lot of things have been pulled down. I would go on a spree of trying to get stuff just because I wanted to learn and understand as much as I can, but I'm not going to show like the real graphic one. Okay. Hold on. I'm trying to think. You still there?
Yep.
I'm like, am I bothering?
No, not at all. The thing about the show, it's just a cool length though. It's non-specific. It doesn't have to be Odin. It could be inspired by a movie. That's true. Yeah.
And there's also another thing I found was really interesting that I was telling you about was, I'm just going to send a couple and I can talk you through them, but Brad's a part of the the Freemasons, and there's also pictures of McClellan, the prosecutor. He's part of the same Freemason chapter. That's interesting to me as well. I don't know. Like, I wondered, like, it's like, shut up.
Yeah.
All right, so I sent you the ones I had.
I'm waiting for
That
them to
okay.
finish whatever it's called. I don't know how you sent it. You don't send them normally like screenshots. You drop them or something, whatever it's called.
I go to my photos and it pulls from my iCloud. It's something of how it's backed up. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It's taking a minute. It's like scrolling.
I have so much stuff from Brad's Facebook. I just try to give you what may help here.
Yeah.
But definitely don't. I mean, I don't know.
No, that's exactly what I'm interested in. I'm just waiting for it to. It says 12 photos are being uploaded. I'll be notified when they're ready. And it's like, bitch, what? Just send it to me. Like, just appear.
Really?
Yeah. That
usually
happens when you send things to me. I don't know how you send them. It says send via iCloud. You're the only person I know who sends things via iCloud.
What am I doing wrong?
I don't know. It may not be anything wrong. You're the only one that it comes through like that for me. Um, and so Brad was supposed to answer to the subpoena and didn't.
Well, this field. So apparently, yeah, I mean, we could like go further into it, but if a lot of people think that Brad baby, they think that when they're doing the descriptions, like what if who everybody was describing as bridge guy was Elvis, but really the capture that the girls got was a different guy and it was Brad Holder. Like there's a lot of different theories because people, feel like there had to have been a group, a lot, like it was like a sacrifice that like Abby was kind of, she did like the hangman is supposed to be Odin. Is it still not working?
Oh, nope, it's still going around. But I was pulling up the Frank's motion. I'm trying to.
Did you want like a synopsis of like each of them, like to
Yeah.
like know like who the players are?
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second.
Oh, okay, here. Okay. So this says a primer. Brad Holder, Patrick Westphal, and Elvis Fields, key alternate suspects. So this primer is designed to inform newcomers about compelling evidence suggesting the involvement of third-party suspects, which the defense was not allowed to introduce, of Abby and Libby. While the trial of Richard Allen is now underway, many are unfamiliar with I'm unfamiliar with the strong links to a group of individuals practicing Odinism, a pagan Norse religion often appropriated by white nationalist groups. So they have ritualistic elements at the crime scene. Both girls had sticks and branches arranged on their bodies, mimicking specific runes, symbols deeply tied to Odinism. Sticks and tree branches were deliberately, carefully, and proficiently placed on each girl in a certain arrangement, mimicking certain ruins. Libby's blood painting. A symbol resembling the F rune, often signifying Odin, was found on a nearby tree, painted with Libby's blood. Abby's horns. Small sticks resembling horns were crudely placed on Abby's head. Elvis Fields, a later suspect, confessed to giving Abby horns with sticks, matching the crime scene evidence. Posing and clothing differences. The girls were posed differently. Libby was naked with blood markings across her body, while Abby was dressed in Libby's clothes with no blood on her garments. The deliberate arrangement of the bodies and symbolic elements points strongly towards ritualistic practices with Odinism, a theory largely ignored by the lead investigators. So, Brad Holder, a suspect quickly dismissed. Brad Holder, an avowed Odinist, becomes a key suspect. He is directly connected to Abby, as his son Logan was dating her. However, despite alarming evidence, Holder was cleared as a suspect by Unified Command remarkably quick. So the compelling evidence against Holder, the ruins on social media that Shay is showing us. Holder posted images on social media mimicking the specific ruins found at the crime scene, knowledge the public should not have had access to. Police knew, or had to know, that ruins had been left at the crime scene. Additionally, Unified Command had already cleared Holder as a suspect, in spite of the fact that ruins found on Brad Holder's Facebook page mimics ruins found at the crime scene that had not been released to the public. Mimicked murder scene image. A disturbing image found on Holder's social media depicted two young women, either dead or posed as such, with
I just sent you those pictures.
with branches laid across their bodies in a forest setting, eerily mirroring the Delphi crime scene. Oh, where is that one? It's still circling. Oh, that's crazy, Shy.
So what I just sent, like of the disturbing one, I didn't send via iCloud. I just sent it to you regular. That's I because I didn't include that in the iCloud one. That's the one I was saying that was really disturbing.
Oh, I'll show you what it looks like at my end. Hold on.
I don't know what's going on. I could resend stuff. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. Not your fault.
Okay, was there ever a leak reported between Okay, keep going. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead. You can answer.
Hold on 1 second. I need to switch my headphones real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay. So, Goodfellas meme. Holder posted a meme the day after the girls' bodies were found, later deleted, depicting characters moving a dead body, with a caption referencing real friends helping to, quote, move the body and never speak of it again. Incriminating 2 a.m. Facebook post. Just 12 hours after the girls went missing, Holder posted and later deleted a status proclaiming his testosterone and energy were, quote, through the roof, raising questions about his actions that night. Linked to Elvis Fields. Fields, a later suspect who confessed to his involvement in the murders, actively recreated Holder's social media posts, including photos of weaponry and a mason jar. Fields described himself as part of a gang with a brother, suggesting connections to Holder and the Vinlanders group. Weak alibi and suspicious behavior. Holder claimed to be at work during the murders, but his alibi was weakly investigated. Deputy Rogers memorialized his contact with human resources at Liberty Landfill as follows, quote, Case provided this officer a copy of the timesheet for this week showing Brad indeed had clocked in and out on February 13th. Disregard of tips. Multiple tipsters alerted law enforcement to Holder's suspicious social media activity and potential connection to the crime, but these were swiftly dismissed by investigators. Quote, Leggett essentially gave up on investigating Brad Holder because of Holder's purported alibi. None of this was allowed in court. So, other third-party suspects and the Odin report. So, Trooper Kevin Murphy independently investigated Elvis Fields after his sister, Mary Jacobs, reported his suspicious confession of being involved in the murders. On February 14th, her brother, Elvis Fields, was rambling, hyper, and borderline incoherent. He was talking about having a brother and was part of a gang now. Elvis told her that he had been on a bridge with 2 girls that were killed. This investigation revealed several key connections back to Holder and the Odinite group. So Elvis's confession, Fields, described as mentally impaired, admitted his involvement to 2 of his sisters, even revealing knowledge of specific crime scene details such as the placement of sticks to give Abby horns. Elvis told her that someone named Abigail was a troublemaker, so he had to give her horns, end quote. Shay, I'm getting chills.
I know, I told you. I'm one that believes the Odinism because I just think that this has more more around it and more people to validate, like Elvis's sister talking, and then you'll have Brad Holder's ex-wife. Like it's nuts to me how much like is out here. And then you have Richard Allen that was at the bridge and says he was there, and then they just find him. Like it's just, this is whack. I mean, I don't know. I can't understand how you wouldn't want to like talk about like these connections here.
This is more compelling than Richard's confessions without the details.
Well, and a lot of people, even like for the longest time, law enforcement was saying that they felt like this was more than one person. Yeah, Neat Noodle. There's been people that have been that investigated this case or somewhere around it, like where there's these happenstance house fires murders. Just recently, like Click, he was the one that went forward to the defense team and was telling them about this additional investigation that pushed the defense team to take the prosecution back to court for discovery and saying, we know you have more. And that's where they had to come out and say that they had all those days missing of recordings. Now, Click was working a different job, then he was arrested. Like, I think they're trying every way to shut people up.
So it says the spit incriminating statement. After submitting a DNA sample, Fields chillingly asked a state trooper if he could explain his spit being found on one of the girls. Later, he confirmed to a different sister that he did, quote, spit on one of the girls, end quote, after they were killed. Shay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He
Oh my
said this to
God.
them.
What
Like, it was
photo is
reported.
that?
That's the one that he had up on his Facebook. That's what I
No
said. I don't want to send
way.
it to you. Yes.
That's not a real person, right?
Yes, that's real. That's why I said don't put it up.
What? That's real?
Yes. If a tree falls in the woods was the caption. And it's girls lying with branches on. Yes.
Where is that photo from?
That was on his Facebook. It says,
Oh,
for example, the court will learn that this image was on Brad Holder's social media and actually mimicked the crime scene.
oh my God.
One of the women had her arm, both women had tree limbs and sticks arranged on their bodies. One of the women had her arm stretched out above her head, similar to the way that Libby's arm was stretched above her head. Both women were clothed, and the stick and the tree branch formations on these girls were different than the stick and tree branch formations on Libby and Abby, but otherwise it bore an eerie similarity to the murder scene in Delphi. And then if you see other posts that you have that Brad was doing, they are the poses of the girls.
They
It's
are.
nuts.
Oh my God.
I think the FBI was definitely onto this with this group of team that was investigating this heavily, and it was shut down. And I want to know why. Who, where knows what?
I'll never be able to unsee that photo because
No,
that
Eric,
is
it wasn't shown.
what?
This stuff is not allowed in at all. This what I just sent her. It was a link to the picture that was introduced with this Frank's motion. None of this is allowed.
I'm shook right
Yes,
now.
Melissa is Rockaway's. Like she was following it with us, and then she had the Frank's motion come out, but like all the images weren't released just yet. And then it's kind of like a flood of info for her.
Well, because that photo depicts I didn't expect to see a photo of an actual deceased person. Because how the hell
Yeah.
did we post that on Facebook? But how identical it was to how the girls were is unsettling.
It's like they say it's like they're claiming it's like a ritualistic murder.
Okay. So your other photos went through. And
Yes,
so
so
then
this
you can go ahead.
So this is like the one you had up. So this is February 17th, 2018. It's the Hangman, which you already showed the Abby comparison. There are some people that have questions about, the blood, the bodies, and the flow. Some people think that they may have been hung up. I
You
mean, there's a
guys, we
lot of
do
theories.
know the blood, and I'm not saying Libby was upside
Hey,
down. God
Audrey.
forbid. What I'm saying is they admitted in trial the blood flowed up. And the only theory that we were given is potentially while she was being moved, there was a period of time where her head may have dipped more down, which would then lead the blood to drip up. That's the only theory we were giving. Okay. And so
So
this
could you
is
imagine the
just over.
jurors finding this later?
Oh my God. It can't be a mystery. The jurors don't know any of this.
And like that's Rockaways is right. That is exactly what Judge Gold kept saying. No nexus, no nexus. Like they're not letting them bring it in.
So this is just over a year. Look at the date, February 17th, right? 2018. Well, I started back acrylic. Hail Odin. Odin. Mm, 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 mm.
Mm-hmm. And what else? Or sorry, what other ones?
Brad Holder posted picture. Hail Odin.
And just showing that some of the runes, like yeah,
There's a
just to kind of
B, T. I don't know if that's a T.
well, I didn't say do the alphabet, but just showing like it's like he practices. Like a lot of people feel that like the positioning to like sticks that were around the crime scene were runes. Specifically they said that there was a pool of blood on some sticks, I think at the feet of Abby and Libby, and but like kind of below them but between them, and the way that they were positioned was like a rune symbol as well. It's like the one that's on Brad's hand, which I think I included in this group. Can we keep going?
Mm-hmm. You're supposed to send people hearts and kittens on Valentine's Day.
It's
You're
February
welcome.
14th, 2017, same year.
This is the day that they were found, guys. Ha 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 ha. LOL. Happy Valentine's Day, you fuckers. Wow.
Abby's boyfriend's dad.
Abby's boyfriend's dad.
Yeah.
I have chills.
And so a lot of people think Libby's the target, but then again, if Abby's pristine, I don't know. I mean, there's just, it's a lot of weird thinking to this. It's wild. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, that's not something I would hope, like, I would just hope nobody would post. Yeah, I think at this one, I was just trying to show you, like, they were doing this, yeah, doing my homework, showing, oh, so the F, see the F?
Yeah, right there.
That's what they call the F tree. A lot of people think that the F, they think it's a rune. The communication, inspiration, and ancestors. A god of communication, inspiration, ancestors. Yeah. I know I went crazy on his Facebook for he. That's Logan. That's Abby's boyfriend. That's his son. That was one of the comparisons.
I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I
You
don't
keep
like
going.
it.
I know. I said this is a bigger connection than Richard Allen. So this is why I'm like, this kind of bothers me that like, did you really? So this is on the day the girls went missing. This was the message that he had posted. Today, need, constraint, motivation. Today's message. Today, think about how necessity has shaped your life. Was there a time when you did something because you absolutely had to? Also, think of times you came to endings in your life because you were blocked or restricted. What have you learned about limitations and necessities from these? Just weird stuff, man. You can keep going.
I'm just like absorbing it.
I know. It's a lot. This one is on the February 13th, the day the girls went missing. What are you doing? Are you licking me? Shh, just let it happen. Me right before I get the shit slapped out of me. Just weird stuff. I was taking pictures the day, the girls went missing, the days after. Like, I just wanted to kind of show, like, why is he showing, and then two pussycats, two girls, two cats? Like, I don't know. The symbolism is weird.
Yeah.
I just think of all different kinds of things. This is February 14th today. So Tewaz, February 4th, 2017, Justice, Duty, Will. Today's a day to focus your energy towards what you know is right. Pull on your inner warrior to guide and encourage you. This rune can help you succeed in personal endeavor, but only if your intention is aligned with your highest truth. If there's something you've been feeling guilty about, today is a day to do the honorable thing. It's the warrior rune.
Guilty
So,
about the day after.
mm,
Right. Let's not forget that the state's theory is that this is a crime of opportunity that'll took one very short middle-aged man with health issues 19 minutes.
yeah.
Oh my God.
But Brad was, I think Brad was in his 40s.
So February 14th, again, the day after the day the girls were found.
You can read it if you
Okay.
want.
Here's my words of inspiration for today. Today is Tires Day. I also drew the ruin Taiwaz in Galaxy Runes. All this past weekend and the beginning of this week, I've been drawing runes that have to do with giving up the baggage in my life or cutting away the old. What I believe the gods are trying to tell me is sometimes in our lives we have to make sacrifices, and it hurts. But like the gods made sacrifices to become who they were, so must we. Like a butterfly has to shed his cocoon to become the butterfly, so must we soldier through a hardship to become better. I don't even like the cutaway term, you know.
No, I agree. I am grabbing something else for you. I was gonna grab the runes alphabets. Okay, I don't think I sent this one to you, but just so you can see some of the runes if you wanted to like compare what he's talking about and get a better understanding. But um I do need to run to the restroom, so I will be right back.
Okay. And then this says February 18th, Brad Holder is in Delphi, Indiana. Here at the viewing, the line is long. Logan is all upset.
So they're at the girls, yeah, funeral. Yeah. So
The viewing was already on the 18th.
hmm yeah, and you know that they did open casket and they did scarves around the girls' necks.
Did they really?
hmm But I do have to run the restroom, so sorry. I just had to pipe in there.
They went to the viewing? Oh my god. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to just like absorb this for a second because I'm a little bit shook. These are so disturbing.
Okay, I'm back.
I just don't. I don't even know.
Yeah, I know.
I remember seeing this.
Yeah. So the F, the one that's in Zeus, Odin, that's the one
Mhm.
they think was on the tree. But the blood spatter specialist was saying that it was, I don't know, upside down L, or I don't even know how you put it, but that's what a lot of people think that one looks most like. Um, but yeah, I mean, these were some of the things that you saw that he was drawing. I think they did the one that's Tewaz, like victory masculine. That was like February 14th, the T. Like
Mhm.
he just talks about him. I just wanted to kind of show you like what those runes may look like. And then if you there like some of the symbolism that they were finding. A lot of people, said that like they couldn't see like the antlers, on Libby, but I think that it said it perfect um a- in the Frank's motion was it wasn't that it was supposed to be like like sticks like that were like set above her head. It was supposed to be how the sticks were placed to come up to look like antlers. And it's interesting because early on, when the people that found um and I have the text messages because they've been out for a long time, but it was like the people that are part of the search group that found her, they or found the girls. At first, when walking up, they thought it was deer because the antlers like sticking up. because the sticks were sticking up. The girls were on the ground. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that was kind of that like interesting symbolism. So like just little bits and pieces that like you've heard kind of uh, from the years, and it was like this Frank's motion like brought it out in a way that was like nothing else. But I'm sorry I'm not like completely buttoned up. It's been a little bit, and I've been so focused more on the trial, but I definitely went down this rabbit hole.
Well,
Gavel wants to know if we're doing another live.
yeah, I was typing hell yeah after we get the verdict, because I can't. And like Rockaway's, I think Rockaway's, I'm sorry, someone was saying, imagine being a juror and then finding out all this after.
Well, Rockways, I'm wondering if somebody debunked it because they don't want it to come across as staging like this. Because remember how whenever they said the girls were undone, and whenever they did the evidentiary, admission to be able to bring this stuff in, the no nexus stuff. I think that they were very careful with that, and even if they thought that, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think they would have. I think they would have skirted that careful. Just the part about the deer, yeah. Okay. I still think that the positioning is interesting. And the placement of the girls, because like, Deet said earlier, like if you were trying to hide this, like why just this small amount,
I don't think that they were. I think I kind of align with what that lady, and I apologize because I don't know what her name is, in that video we were watching. I think it was a
Mm-hmm.
stage.
Yeah.
They were left there to be found. I don't think any effort was to hide them. But if I'm going to go I'm not educated enough on if they were taken and then placed there at a later
Mm-hmm.
time. I'd have to look at the mapping and I'd have to hear a theory that would make sense to that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm just in a bit of it doesn't feel right. Nothing about this trial feels right, and like I said, there are no winners, and there's not going to be any winners no matter the outcome.
Yeah.
Because even if he's found guilty, I do not think they proved it beyond a reasonable doubt, to where there's always going to be the what if he isn't the guy, like I don't think anybody's going to walk away feeling confident about this.
Well, one thing I would really like to know, and I know that I don't know if anybody else has found or heard anything different, but the people that I've been able to, um, hear their feedback from the trial, none of them have commented on if when they showed the interviews of Richard, if he sounded like Bridge Guy, we discussed earlier that like even at that, like the video and audio itself was altered, and so that's not in its true form, so it's hard to trust. But um I would be curious in some like voice comparisons in the original audio to some of the other suspects. I really would.
Yeah, you're definitely gonna have to listen, Gavel, but you need to come up for the next like might be tomorrow. I'm pretty sure they're deliberating tomorrow, even though it's a holiday. The jury is sequestered, and so I know that the judge has been having them do half days on Saturdays and stuff. Um, I I just pray, and whether you pray, put out, I don't know what to refer to, just putting out good vibes into the universe. So I just say pray, even though you could pray to the universe, it doesn't matter. But these poor families and the girls, and I'm a adamant believer in, you cannot get justice until you know the truth of what happened. And holding someone accountable who may not have done this is not going to be justice. It's not going to be justice. I think we're going to have a hung jury. I cannot see 12 people agreeing. Can you see 12 people agreeing on this?
No.
It's that phone that's gonna bother the shit out of me, Shay.
The phone really, like I think I think the phone was a good thing, for the defense. It definitely showed ISP with their pants down, like not really having all their shit together here. But the geofencing, there's so much that goes with the data beyond that they could have looked into this further. Now, when it comes to Richard Allen, I hope that the jurors, when they're deliberating, like consider all of the witnesses and whatever their credibility that they determine to be. But I think there is a serious problem with the way that Richard was handled to begin with. He should never have been in prison, and the conditions and the way his mental decline, and it's awful. It's sad all around.
It's sad all around. There are no winners in this situation, and like I said, I just keep getting haunted by the fact that, oh my god, like what the families are gonna have. Imagine going through trial. Imagine coming this far, and you're watching the evidence presented. I can't imagine it feeling good for them, realizing, you know what? It's not like they're gonna have a different perspective really than how we're seeing it. And
Hmm.
then what he gets off, he is the guy he gets off. He isn't the guy he gets off. Who is held accountable? Like they could have just potentially messed up these girls ever getting justice.
Right.
Uh
It's heartbreaking.
it
I
is.
don't think that you can deny the crime scene. I mean, you have like, you know, very seasoned FBI and them that were considerate that, I went as far as to like look at the comparison of like what like real staging is like. There, because things can get like confused based on that, and I don't know. I just don't think that you can look away. I mean, you also have like the guards
Hmm.
at the penitentiary were Odinist wearing Odin patches. So they're also the ones that were on the stand there, testifying apparently against him. So it's a really fucked up situation all around.
Well, and the Rockaways makes a great point. You can't drive a forklift on Haldol, but you can give a valid confession to your trusted therapist, right? And um
Hmm.
everything that happened with that therapist,
So
I
fucked
don't
up.
I can't trust anything now. I can't. So even if it was legit, you just tainted the fuck out of it. How many days do you think before we get a verdict?
Mm,
I think Tuesday.
I don't know. Um, Maybe Tuesday. I'm thinking it's probably going to be hung.
Yeah, it's gonna be hung.
I think that there's gonna be a tough spot where I think that there could be people, across the aisle on a lot of it,
Yeah.
Um and if it is I guess my worry is that if it is hung, like what do those next steps look like going forward?
I
This has
don't know.
already been a shit show. But then, I still don't think that he's guilty, but if he's not, then you're going to have outrage and answers that are still needed regardless for the families, and they deserve that. And they can't go back and sue, the families can't sue the investigators. It's kind of a fucked up situation all around.
It's a fucked up situation all around. And like I said, it's impossible for a human not to take into certain factors, and the jurors are not supposed to take in, hey, you looked at these girls' mothers' faces, grandmother, like you looked at their family every day in that trial, and that feeling of what, not guilty? And you're not supposed to, because on the other end of it, this man is about to give up his life, right? For what? A crime he didn't commit? Possibly. You can't weigh your decision on that emotion. But how
Mm,
can you not? We're human. We're human.
right.
And
I
it
mean,
was
I
so
think
horrific.
there's
Oh,
what?
Well, and it was so horrific. The autopsy photo, everything they saw.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, when we do get a verdict, we're still on verdict watch. The jury is still deliberating. I want to come live and I want to discuss what our thoughts are because again, I'm going to be shocked either way. I think I'm going to be surprised no matter what the verdict is.
Mm-hmm.
I would not want to be a juror on this jury. I would not.
Marilyn's mom, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, what does the Allen charge look like for Indiana? I think this is going to be like, I mean, I followed Karen Reed and I'm a person that I just follow facts. So, I mean, there's times where I'm like more side on prosecution, other times I'm more on the defense on just wherever the evidence takes me.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was genuinely shocked with Karen Reed's. I'll be honest with you. I felt like after they had the FBI experts on the stand, I know you didn't get to watch the trial,
Yeah.
and they were not hired by the defense. They were brought in specifically by the FBI, and they said there's no way that what had happened to John O'Keefe was caused by a car, which would to me it was just like that's it, like nail in the coffin, she's not guilty. And then I was just completely like devastated on a hung jury. And so I guess like I kind of already expecting that kind of turmoil from this one.
I think there's just not going to be any way. I do not think no one, I don't 100% don't think unanimously guilty, but I also don't think there's any chance that we're going to get a unanimous not guilty. I
Yeah.
just don't see that. And the jurors might be okay with that because, again, I can't. That's a lot of fucking pressure. It's always a lot of pressure, but when it's not black and white and it's this messy, it's even more.
I mean, you have residents out there, from all different viewpoints of this that are, I wouldn't say protesting, but just holding signs, whether, there are ones in support of the girls, ones in support of Richard Allen, just in support of justice, or that they feel like is an injustice of the court system. And I just think that this is like something that should be said. And I think that those who do believe that Richard Allen is innocent in this is that, you know, just because you believe he's innocent doesn't mean that you don't want justice for Libby and Abby. And I think that's
Yes.
really what I hold on to for those that, like, as you're talking in chats, whether you agree or disagree, I think we can all agree we want justice for Libby and Abby.
Yes. Well, and if you're going by that logic, that means anybody charged with a crime is automatically guilty. Come on, guys. Like, and that's the bias a lot of us will have though is and that's why you're not they should have the right to be dressed in normal clothes because we have this predetermined notion in our minds they're guilty. If they are
Like
charged,
West
they are
Memphis
guilty.
3.
Yes. Exactly. And so and it again it's a human fault, like you just thought about up you're charged. They just put on this case like you're definitely guilty. No. And just like Shay said, that doesn't mean you wouldn't want any less of the justice for these girls, but justice means holding the right person and persons accountable.
I believe there was 25 like test key points that Dr. Paula Westcott did to evaluate
Mm-hmm.
um all of Richard's history of mental health, as well as the uh his time within the correction facility, the treatment there, everything that they went through, from medication of Haldol. Like he was under like a severe psychosis. So I'm sorry, like I guess people will say what they want about that, but it happens. People confess to things all the time, and like in false confessions, it happens. But especially in somebody his mental state, it didn't even start with "I did this." And they very much talk about how it leads to that. So listen to the experts. I wouldn't like. And this is when I really wish this part of the audio was available, so the
Mhm.
public can hear from the professionals of how this develops, because I think that's really, really, really important. It's something that they state that it's a I think I did this, I believe, and then you start believing those things as fact, and it takes time of when you may come out of that psychosis to where that may not be true. But if you watch everything pre penitentiary, pre conditions, no, he's adamant that he did not do it. And if they really felt like he did do it, then I point right back to the investigators and say, you had all of this CCTV footage, you knew who was at the trails, you guys could have gone through, re-interviewed, found all these cars, who owns this, tie those things up, but y'all didn't. You didn't care enough to fully investigate this. So I'm sorry, the confessions came after. That's what they were hoping to get. It was a coercion. And
Mhm.
don't forget, Brad Weber's gun was not ruled out.
Well, and Scott, what details did Richard Allen know that only the killer would know? Because we kind of got into that
It
earlier, and I
wasn't
know that you weren't
psychosis at
here.
selective times. Sorry.
No, you're fine. And yeah, some golf girl, the discovery, but we know that his therapist was leaking information to and fro. Yeah, but that was he had knowledge, like that was already mentioned numerous times already, and his therapist was giving him information, and it's the same information Gray Hughes was putting out. Come on.
Yeah, and they actually mentioned Grey Hugh's name on this stand.
Yep.
She was talking to him. We showed stuff earlier. You just have to go back and rewind. It's quite astonishing. I think, if you want true justice, then be open-minded and hear from all sides.
Well,
Back.
sorry. And I already said I'm not convinced Richard Allen is innocent. I just am not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt he's guilty. There's a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we were showing earlier. Wouldn't it be so bad if there was some kind of correlation between Gray Hughes coming into info that only Walla, the psychologist, should have had and publicly sharing it, and Walla's Facebook comment stating she liked to listen to Gray Hughes? Like, how about if they were both posted on the same exact day? That would look bad. And then we have Walla commenting Gray Hughes, Delphi After Dark for the drama. True Crime Investigates, Criminality, Defense Diaries, Sleuth Intuition. His calm tone is unnerving. This shows interesting considering Nick McLeland never even got approval to obtain Rick's medical records until April 2nd. So even he shouldn't have had any knowledge about anything Walla wrote down. Yet he did, okay? And then we have March 15th, Gray Hughes alleges Richard Allen saw Weber arrive home on the 13th, details that Walla has claimed are part of Rick's confession. On the 15th, Walla also publicly posted in a Delphi Facebook group about liking Gray Hughes. Then on April 2nd, McLeland granted access to Rick's IDOC medical and mental health records. And then as you can see here, Gray Hughes dropping in the chat, well, when Brad Weber drove home that day, he was seen by Richard Allen. You will find that out someday because the information was already being leaked from Walla to Gray Hughes. So
That's a big
everything is
problem.
tainted. Everything's tainted.
Then you find out that Brad Weber and Steve Bollins are on a personal level. He calls him Steve. And they have a conversation in August that's not recorded. And then Brad bitches to referring to text messages on the stand. there's something afoot that's wrong because he's had different
Did you?
huh?
No, sorry. Did you, Scott? Did you hear the call? No, none of us got to hear the calls, right? So I'm not, and to say that defense attorneys are trying to get their clients free of charges, she was fired. I'm like, this isn't about, of course, every defense attorney, their job is to get their clients off, but that doesn't mean this evidence doesn't exist. That doesn't mean Walla didn't openly confess to doing this. Do you understand that? She openly confessed on the stand to doing it.
Yeah, that's a state's witness right there. Dr. Paula Westcott, yes, she was hired through a GoFundMe because it wasn't money granted by Carroll County for them to hire some to have more expertise to look into this stuff. So that's a problem of itself there. She looks at everything as a whole and she says that she does testify 50% defense, 50% prosecution. That's a good ratio. You have to have professionals that are seeking the truth. Sometimes it may be for the person that you think does it or not, but this is it. And I think that the way she handled it and having her look at things from a higher level view was much needed. I wish the state would have done the same. I said it earlier because they
Nobody
didn't.
got on the stand. Scott, no, nobody got on the stand and confessed to killing two
Nobody did.
girls. Nobody did. And if you're using the calls again, yes, I understand if that's your right, that's your opinion. But to be what I see, you're being confirmation bias. You're saying that, hey, any of this is irrelevant. And you don't want to be like that. The same way I don't want to be like any evidence that points towards his guilt is irrelevant, right? We don't want to be confirmation bias. I think it's very unfair to sit here and say, well, none of this matters because it points in a direction that isn't favorable towards the state.
And you know that some of those people were inmates themselves and security guards, and none of those were recorded. They were like written. They were just told via mouth. Like, come on, like, please. I mean, I think that everybody's just got to be open to what's out there, and I'm gonna take in what experts that are out and available to provide the information. In my opinion, by Dr. Walla being, I'm not fired from the actual like company that she contracts for, but not being fired from the penitentiary itself goes to show that what she did was unethical. And that loses credibility. And that was said on the stand in front of the jurors. Defend.
I believe in due process, Scott, right? So essentially what you're saying is you have to separate emotion. As hard as it is, you have to separate emotion. What happened to those girls are horrific. It's horrific. Everyone agrees. Everyone wants the person held accountable. What you're saying is ignore evidence because fuck that guy. He was accused. No, that's not how it works. And that's what's so terrifying is that there are people, no offense, but there are people like that. Now, if you're arguing, hey, I'm leaning towards guilt because of the evidence, I respect that. But that's not how you're coming across. You're coming across like, well, I don't give a shit to even discuss evidence. Fuck him, he's a dirtbag. That is where's the conversation in that? Okay, and that's fine. So you're taking the stance of, I can't get over those confessions. I can't see any factors in why anyone would confess, whether he was injected with Halidol unwillingly against his will or not. I don't see any reason. I think he's guilty. I respect that. That's fair. But we're not going to just, oh, well, how can you defend? Nobody's defending him. It's due process. It's evidence. This is what, like, I just don't understand not having that mindset.
Well, I always say that, what if this was your loved one and you know they didn't do this at all and they just happened to be at the wrong place, maybe around the wrong time. We don't know the timing because everything is kind of up in the air, and they're sitting on trial for something so hellacious. And would you want people feeling that way and not open-minded to what's out there and their mental health and their history and I mean, I think you got to be open-minded and think this could be anybody. And same thing for the girls. If you want true justice for them, then you want the right person. And I don't think Richard Allen is the guy based on everything that's been shown by the state. They have
Not
not proved
proven.
beyond a reasonable doubt.
Admitted, Scott. He admitted he volunteered that information, but we have other people who confessed. So do you want to argue, hey, if you confess, you did it? Because we have other
Pull
people
up
who
Elvis
confessed.
Fields.
Yes, we have other people who literally confessed to this crime. So what about them? Brad Holder's sister.
Did you get the doc I sent you? Okay. Oh, you got that one. Okay.
Brad became a key suspect. He is directly connected to Abby, as his son Logan was dating Abby. Despite alarming evidence, Holder was cleared as a suspect. So, aside from the horrific ruins and photos he made at the time of the crimes on social media, there was a disturbing image found on Holder's social media depicting two young women either dead or posed as such, with branches laid across their bodies in a forest setting, eerily mirroring the Delphi crime scene. He had a weak alibi. He claimed to be at work during the murders, but his alibi was weakly investigated. And I'm trying to find, did I already jump past it?
What?
Him admitting, where'd it go?
For Elvis?
Oh, okay. So then Holder posted a meme the day after the girls' bodies were found, later deleted, depicting characters moving a dead body, with a caption referencing real friends helping to, quote, move the body and never speak of it again. Incriminating 2 a.m. Facebook post. Just 12 hours after the girls went missing, Holder posted and later deleted a status proclaiming his testosterone and energy were, quote, through the roof, raising questions about his actions that night. So, Fields, a later suspect who confessed to his involvement in the murders, actively recreated Holder's social media posts, including photos of weaponry and a mason jar. Fields described himself as part of a gang with a brother, suggesting connections to Holder and the Vinlanders group. So multiple tipsters alerted law enforcement to Holder's suspicious social media activity and potential connection to the crime, but these were swiftly dismissed by investigators. But where? Okay, so Elvis's confession. Fields, described as mentally impaired, admitted his involvement to two of his sisters, even revealing knowledge of specific crime scene details, such as the placements of the sticks to give Abby horns. Elvis told her that someone named Abigail was a troublemaker, so he had to give her horns, end quote. After submitting a DNA sample, Fields chillingly asked a state trooper if he could explain his, quote, spit being found on one of the girls. Later, he confirmed to a different sister that he did, quote, spit on one of the girls, end quote, after they were killed. So if we're going to use the argument that, he confessed, well, then the same goes for any person who confessed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing the whataboutisms here. Who leaked the photos? Okay. Anytime you want to have an actual debate, we can have the debate, but we're not going to do the whataboutisms. Let's take it one thing at a time, right? One thing at a time. If we're focusing on, hey, a confession's a confession, I expect you to respond to the confession part, not jump to the next part. Let's finish one and then jump to the next part. Where's Richard Allen's? Duh. Come on, dude. And I'm not saying Richard's not guilty. I'm just saying your argument's weak, bro.
There was DNA of unknown males. They said that on the stand. I don't know if you're not following at all, but may want to.
Yeah, and then a shit ton of interviews just gone.
Yeah, because of technical difficulties.
Mm-hmm. But all right, I gotta hop off. We will be live once we get the verdict. Shay, thank you so much. I love you. I'm going to be talking to you about this privately because I want to keep going in that aspect and learn more of everything else with that. Because we didn't even get to talk about like the Keegan Klein stuff much. But I love you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for everybody in the chat. And either way, I just pray justice for these girls, and justice for the families, and peace for the families. And if Richard is not guilty, then, prayers for him and his family too.
All right, bye.
Good night, guys.